Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night chat about an important topic and other things, of course. So let's go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight. And I have got to tell you, the anti-imperialist movement is marching ahead. And we, the Center for Political Innovation, our organization is right where it needs to be, and we have got a very, very exciting couple months ahead of us. Tonight, we're going to do just a normal stream, just like we always do. I will be giving my opening remarks, then we're going to do the roll call, and then I will answer your questions. Best way to send questions is to go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin, but we do take super chats. And I'm going to do something special with super chats tonight, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. But we do take super chats now that we're monetized again, which is always good. But yeah, the best way to send questions is go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Now, we are having our Center for Political Innovation National Training Program, August 12th through 19th in Chicago. It is going to be absolutely awesome. People are signing up, and we just had a great CPI members weekly check-in. Things are moving ahead, and the National Training Program is going to be great. We're actually planning a very, very important event to take place during it. So go ahead and register if you haven't registered for the National Training Program yet. There's the registration form. Go and fill it out because I am so excited. There's new people who've registered. Hold your horses. You'll probably get a call very shortly. We got our members following up with the new people who've registered. So, man, stuff is happening. Stuff is happening. Let's go. You said it right. From a drop to an ocean, our national training program. I'm hitting the road in July. July 2nd in New York City, we're having an awesome event on July 2nd. July 18th in Minneapolis, we're having a great event. And July 11th in Los Angeles, I am going on the road. It is going to be really, really great. We got some really great stuff happening. We, as an organization, are marching ahead. So Finish the American Revolution Tour, End the British Empire System and its Wars. That is 3 cities, July 2nd, July 18th, July 11th. And it's very, very exciting, all leading up to our National Training School on August 12th through 19th. Big event related to that we'll be announcing shortly. Shout out to everyone, who is dedicated to CPI. Shout out to Penny and Gabby and Dan and Ishmael and Stephen and Timothy and Penny and John, and oh man, we just have such a great group of people. I am so excited. I can't tell you how happy I am that Caleb is the cutting edge of politics. You said it, brother, but it's not just me. It's the organization that we are building. We are building something very, very, very special. So yeah, register for the training school. Love to have you join us. We're doing really, really great stuff. We're going to talk about tonight how we've always been ahead of the game. But anyhow, the Center for Political Innovation, CPI, is where it's at. We've been in the streets. We were out in front of the jail where Maduro was being held. We were in the streets all over this country. We've been featured and prominently doing stuff. So CPI is where it's at. Join the Center for Political Innovation. We are the anti-imperialist movement of America. That's us. We are the Center for Political Innovation, and we are marching forward like you wouldn't believe. I've got so much to talk about tonight. We need you as a member. We need you in the streets with us. We need this movement now more than ever. The economy, whew, I mean, everything is costing so much. And I mean, anyway, we got a lot to talk about. We have got a lot to talk about tonight. Yeah, I mean, we got a testimonial right here in the chat. Cameron says, I never thought the red-haired, energetic guy I learned about through Occupy Wall Street would be this impactful and this relevant nearly 20 years later. Shout out to you and CPI. Well, Cameron, I appreciate you saying that. It's been a long journey, and it just keeps getting better because we are so dedicated and we keep meeting so many great people, and we are doing what needs to be done. So thank you, Cameron. I'm glad you've been following our work for that long. And yeah, we're going to talk about a lot tonight. And we're going to talk about how we brought down BreadTube, folks. We brought down BreadTube, and BreadTube is over, and we survived the storm, and we are still here, and we got so much we're going to talk about tonight. As I mentioned before, what we're doing tonight is that, we're doing, just like we always do. I see someone sent a buy me a coffee already. That is appreciated. That'll be the first question answered. But we're going to do something special with super chats tonight. Since super chats, we're getting them now to get the ball rolling on the super chats. There's a song that I have. Okay, I hope everyone's all right. I just heard a little bit of a boom. There's a song that people really like on this YouTube channel. It is the New China song, and it is a song that is pretty obscure. It's a 1970s song about China from the perspective of American communists who go and visit China. I will play the New China song tonight if 10 super chat questions come in. That's what needs to happen. 10 super chat questions, and we play the New China song. So if you want to hear the New China song, 10 super chats on YouTube come in, and we're playing the New China song. So make me play it. Make me play the New China song because it's a favorite of our community. That's my challenge to all of you. Briggy says, I'm looking forward to tonight's stream. Well, Briggy, I've got plenty to talk about. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Send questions for the second half of the show, 10 super chats, and I will play the New China song. Folks, the first book that I ever had go viral was this book. It was called BreadTube Serves Imperialism. And it went viral because of the fact that around the time of the pandemic, a little bit before the pandemic, there was an internet community that had been formed to educate people about socialism and communism. I should say to miseducate people about socialism and communism. And that internet community made one of the most epic mistakes that they could have ever made, which is they made me their boogeyman. They decided I was going to be the face of a bad communist. I was going to be the face of a bad, what you don't want to be. They were going to be the good socialist, the good kind of socialist, and I was going to be the face of what you don't want to be. And this decision, I am convinced, was made long before BreadTube was ever created. Folks, this video, for those who haven't seen it, this is me. This is back in 2013. This is me. This is more important than we realize, right? I think I've shown this here before. There's probably people who haven't seen it. This is in 2013, September of 2013. Barack Obama was threatening to bomb Syria, and I was involved in organizing protests against it in Washington, D.C. and in New York City. And this is the only time I've ever appeared on CNN. And you'll see afterwards the clip of me from the same day at the rally that went viral, that was all over the world. It was shown on TV all over the world. This is 2013. This is well over 10 years ago now. This is good. This is like 13 years ago. Before BreadTube, before any of this, this was me. This was me.
So as Congress makes up its mind on whether to take military action against Syria, anti-war groups are getting ready to stage protests in Times Square today. Rosa Flores joining me live now from New York. So Rosa, tell us more about the protests unfolding there in New York.
Yeah, well, those protesters are making their way here to Times Square, and I'm actually here with one of the organizers, Caleb from the International Action Center. And I know that you guys are expecting dozens, if not hundreds, of people here. But first of all, explain to us kind of what is your mission? Why are you guys here?
The last thing we need right now is a new war against Syria. Right now, they're cutting food stamps, hospitals are closing, schools are being shut down. There's a budget crisis in this country. We do not need more money for a new war against Syria. Every one of the cruise missiles they would send would cost over $1 million. That could be teachers that could be hired. That could be hospitals that could be opening. But instead, it's blowing up and killing people in another country, and that's not right.
Now, let me ask you about the support that you're getting, because from what I understand, lots of organizations are coming out of the woodwork and asking to be involved. Tell us a little bit about the involvement of other organizations that perhaps would not be, in this case, participating in something like this.
Well, 89% of the U.S. public is opposed to this war. People in this country overwhelmingly oppose an attack on Syria. But that won't mean anything unless people do something about it. If people aren't in the streets and organizing and demonstrating and making clear to the government that they will not let this war pass, that won't mean anything, because we've seen so many times the government not listen to the people and go to war. I don't believe what's coming out about this chemical weapons attack. I have a lot of questions about it. There are a lot of facts that just aren't adding up. And we've heard about weapons of mass destruction before. There's so many lies to take us into war. We don't need a new war. We need jobs, schools, education, and not a new war against the Syrian people. And these rebels that our government and our tax dollars are paying for, they're not good folks, and they're doing awful things there in Syria, and we should not be supporting these rebels in Syria.
Right now in this city, hospitals are closing, schools are closing, all kinds of resources that people in this city use to survive are being shut down. Well, what are they talking about doing? They're talking about a new war against Syria. How much money is every single one of these missiles going to cost? At least $1 million. That could be teachers, that could be nurses, that could be doctors. But instead, it's going to a war. Do we want that? No. And now, you know, there have already been 100,000 people killed in this war in Syria. And they've been killed because our tax dollars are going to fund the Syrian rebels. A lot of these Syrian rebels aren't even from Syria. They're from places like Qatar, places like Jordan, places like Libya, and they've been shipped in. Syria was a peaceful country, and now there's a civil war going on. And the United Nations has reported that these rebels in Syria, funded by our tax dollars, are recruiting children as young as 11 and 12, and they're recruiting them and using them to kill people in Syria. Chemical weapons have been used by the Syrian rebels. They've used them. Carla Del Ponte from the United Nations has confirmed that. They're using sarin gas, and they're killing innocent people in Syria with our tax dollars. Yes. And the reason that they're talking about striking Syria right now, the reason they're talking about striking is because those rebels are losing. Why are they losing? They're losing because the people of Syria don't support them. They don't support foreign importing insurgents trying to tear up their country. And that is why Obama wants to send the missiles to do what the rebels can't do, because they don't have support on the ground. We want the people of Syria to run Syria. We want money for jobs and schools and education, not a new war. I'm with FIST, Fight Imperialism, stand together, and you can check us out. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, interesting. So that was in New York City. I was in Times Square, where we started our rally in Times Square. That's where I was interviewed by CNN. Then we marched down to Union Square. I gave that rant. And then that was picked up by a YouTube channel. There's a guy who worked with InfoWars, and he picked up that rant, and he called it Epic Rant About Syria. And it got, you know, hundreds of thousands of views. It was everywhere. And at the time, I was working with Press TV at the United Nations. And there were, you know, other Iranian journalists who worked for, TV, Iran, what is it? Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, others. They said they've been showing that clip of you on Iranian TV all day, Caleb. And I said, dang, okay. And they said, be careful. They said, be careful, Caleb. you know, you already are working with Press TV, and that, you know, they've been showing that clip of you on Iranian TV all day. And I said, okay. And, you know, I mean, they were concerned about my safety. And that clip was on RT. At the time, I didn't work for RT. I was a guest. I did analysis, you know, for RT, but I didn't work for RT. That clip was on Venezuela and Telesur. They showed that clip. And then another thing happened. So the next day, there was a rally in Washington, D.C. I went to that rally, you know, and it was the Answer Coalition and the International Action Center. We had a rally against the bombing of Syria. And there were anti-Assad activists there, and I shouted at them. We had an argument, basically. So I don't know if people have ever heard of this, but I refuse to watch it. I'm not interested. But 2, 3, it's got to be 5 years ago or so, I kept getting messages. People sent me the screenshots because there's this film on Netflix that I have not watched to this day. I refuse to watch it. And it has video of me from that day. And this was on Netflix, this film that they made on Netflix. It's called How to Become a Dictator. And in the movie, in this stupid Netflix, How to Become a Tyrant miniseries, they show my face multiple times as the face of a bad person. When they're trying to show the image of like an evil authoritarian or something, they show me shouting at one of these pro-Al-Qaeda, anti-Assad, anti-Syrian government protesters. I shouted, "You are a terrorist murderer." And they have the clip of me shouting, "You are a terrorist murderer." And they show it over and over again in the documentary. They don't tell you who I am. And they're not talking about Syria. The film is just a propaganda, like CIA propaganda piece. And they made me the bad guy in the film, right? And they just showed my face, and people were saying, you should sue them. You should get them to pay you. They used you in this like crazy. And I said, well, okay. And that's not even really that important. It just so happened I happened to be at the White House. It happened to be there were a bunch of TV cameras filming the protest. It happened to be that, you know, the Assad people, the anti-Assad people were there, and I shouted, "You're a terrorist murderer." And so they used that clip of me in this How to Become a Tyrant. Briggy says, I'm sorry to say I watched it. It's not so good. Yeah. You know, Netflix is owned by the government pretty much, right? Netflix is slop, and they made me the bad guy. And so that shows you that I have been in their, how do you put this? I have been on their radar as someone to make the bad guy, to be the bad example for a really long time. Long before I worked at RT, long before this YouTube channel blew up, long before BreadTube Serves Imperialism, long before anything, I have been on their shit list, as I am for real. I am the real deal. I am what they are afraid of. I am an anti-imperialist. I want to connect the struggles of working people in America with the struggles of the people around the world against imperialism. I think that the enemy of Iran and the enemy of America is the same. It's the big banks and big corporations that have dominated the world. I say our real enemy is at home. I say, we need to build a movement in this country to liberate ourselves from Wall Street and the big banks and monopolies that have been grinding our communities into poverty. And we need to stand in solidarity with the people of the world in their struggle against imperialism. Now that's how I see things. And that's, that's Marxism, Leninism as I understood it. That's the ideology that I spent my 20s as a Workers' World Party member and as somebody who spent a lot of time studying communism. That's what I believed. And I had gone to the Islamic Republic of Iran. I spoke at the New Horizon Conference, which was an anti-Israel, anti-Zionist conference in Iran. That's what I believed. That's just who I am. And I've been on their radar screen for a long time. So right before the pandemic, you remember 2020, right? In the year of 2020, right before the lockdowns began, people reached out to me, and I received these messages. Will you debate Destiny? I did not know who Destiny was. And people said, well, Destiny, you never heard of Destiny? Oh, he's huge. Destiny. You got to debate Destiny. You got to debate Destiny. And the person who actually reached out to me to debate Destiny is a very interesting character. is also named Caleb. There are not that many people named Caleb, but it was this guy, Caleb Kane. My name is Caleb Maupin, but there is another person who shares my first name. His name is Caleb Kane, a very mysterious individual. Caleb Kane. And Caleb Kane, was this young guy who had I guess been featured in the New York Times as somebody who had been a conservative and believed in conspiracy theories, and then stopped and was trying to help other young men not be extremists. This guy, this guy, Caleb Kane, reached out to me. I had no idea who he was, and he just said, "Hey, we would like you to debate Destiny." And I thought, okay. And then I mentioned to people, "Hey, they want me to debate Destiny." And people are like, "Oh my God, Destiny is huge." So I looked up Destiny Stephen Bennell. I looked him up. Who is he? And it turns out Destiny Stephen Bennell is the first person to ever become a professional video game player. He was a guy who worked as a carpet cleaner in Nebraska. And he then became a professional video game player. He made money streaming his video game playing, right? I don't play video games. I'm not opposed to it. I know it brings a lot of people pleasure. It's just my parents wouldn't allow me to do it when I was young, and I just never developed the habit, and it's just not my thing. And Destiny is the first professional video game player in the world. And that's his claim to fame. And he was debating people. And so I went and listened to some of his debates. And I noticed that what he did in all of his debates was he was debating mainly conservatives, mainly white supremacists, white nationalists. He was debating them. And he would force them to give a perfect blueprint of what they wanted, of the white nationalist utopia. And then he would pick it to pieces. And I knew from my years as an activist, that's not what you do, right? That history is made by different forces moving against each other, tensions in society, different organizations, different classes. You can't just wish something into being. But Destiny basically was appealing to his audience that it was like a game of SimCity, right? With SimCity, you have a blank page. You remember SimCity? You ever play SimCity in elementary school? It's a video game. Right. I remember playing SimCity. It's one of those educational games where you just have a blank slate and you draw a road here and you draw a building here and, SimCity. And he would bring various people on his streams and make them play SimCity and try to get them to draw up a perfect, beautiful blueprint of what the world would look like. And then he would take it apart. And I knew I was not going to fall into the trap of letting him, trick me into playing SimCity. So I wouldn't let him do that. So also I knew that this lie that socialism just never worked anywhere is very easily debunked with basic economic data. So prior to the debate, I just brought huge amounts of economic data about the achievements of socialist countries and came with them. And I watched Destiny with all of the people in his chat, his whole team of hundreds of people, his fact-checking team, scrambling to try and debunk, the 2 or 3 sheets of paper I had in front of me. And you will see, I epically destroyed Destiny, Stephen Bennell. The debate is a little bit painful to watch, and I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. He didn't know what he was prepared for. He thought I was going to get on there and say, well, yeah, real socialism is no, and I didn't do that. I just came with economic data. And after he kept trying to corner me into drawing up a perfect utopia, which I wasn't going to do, then we started arguing about the history of socialism, and I had all the facts about the Soviet Union lifting people out of poverty, about China's achievements, about Cuba, and all of that. And I wiped the floor with him. I mean, he just completely... he didn't know what hit him. And I'm going to show you, this is one of the most epic moments where basically I reduced Destiny to saying, what does life expectancy prove? Now, keep in mind, right? This is not a fair fight. This is, it looks like maybe it's 2-on-1 because this Caleb Kane, who's supposed to be the moderator, is, not really a moderator. He's not on my side. but it's not 2-on-1. This is about 100-on-1, because Destiny has his chat. He's always pounding his computer keyboard because he's got like 100 other people that are being paid that sit there and like try to come up with facts, right? So this is me debating 100 other people, basically, and winning. Watch this. This is an epic feat.
To you from the New York Times. Under NAFTA, as a result, 20 million Mexicans live in food poverty. 25% of the population does not have access to basic food, and 1/5 of Mexican children suffer from malnutrition. As the U.S. heavily subsidized corn and other staples poured into Mexico, producer prices dropped and small farmers found themselves unable to make a living. Some 2 million people have been forced from their farms, right? Mexico's not producing its own food. It's a captive market. It's importing American food, and it's devastated the country. Mexico is poor, and American agribusiness stays rich. That's capitalism. That's why we had the American Revolution. The British Empire was trying to tell us here in the United States that we couldn't develop our own industries. We had to buy from the British. And as a result, we had a revolution so that we could develop our own economy. And the same thing the British Empire was doing to us, capitalism and the huge multinational corporations are doing around the world, keeping countries like Haiti, countries like Nigeria, countries like India captive markets. And countries are constantly fighting to try and break out of this. And the socialist revolutions of the 20th century, they didn't happen in Western Europe as Marx had predicted. They happened in the developing world because capitalism was keeping these countries as impoverished captive markets without their own industries, without their own economic growth, and keeping them as basically vassals, as dependent states, client states that are impoverished and suffering. And socialism was those countries breaking out, planning their economy, and industrializing.
Because I talked with Kyle Kalinske about this.
Yeah, and he's sitting there on his computer, mind you, and his whole team are there scrambling to debunk me. 100 people against one.
I don't know. I would love to read where these bizarro anti-NAFTA studies are coming from. I've seen like very pointed anti-NAFTA like propaganda that will hyper focus on like specific industries that say like, well, corn markets were disproportionately impacted in Mexico and so many jobs were lost here. But like Mexico was one of the large winners in NAFTA. And this is something that I've seen like universally heralded, like exports under farm exports in Mexico. Well, you can't say sure to that. You just literally told me that NAFTA took a shit all over Mexico's economy.
So the New York Times agrees with me. The headline of the article is, under NAFTA, Mexico suffered and the United States felt its pain, November 24th, 2013. I guess they're lying to hurt American capitalism or something.
I'm sorry, are you literally citing me an op-ed to tell me that opinion piece is somehow reflective of the economic consensus on NAFTA?
Yes, I'm citing the statistics in that op-ed, yes. I'm citing something that even the New York Times admits, that Mexico has been
the New York
very
Times,
badly hurt by free trade.
The New York Times is not an economic journal. Why are you telling me that even the New York Times? Also, wait, is this, I'm sorry. Wait a second. Is this article, what's the author of this article?
The author is Laura Carlson.
Wait, what is her background? Is this literally like an opinion piece, or was this written like
a statement against interest? The New York Times is a defender of Western capitalism. The fact that even they would admit what it has done to Mexico, I think, is very strong. Or while we're at it, I have the CIA World Factbook statistics of life expectancy in front of me. Cuba's life expectancy is 78.9 years. The Dominican Republic, another country in the Caribbean, it's part of the Western capitalist system, 71 years. Jamaica, 74. Honduras, 71. Guyana, 68. Mexico, 76. Guatemala, 71. Haiti, 64. Come on. Right? Capitalism's the answer. Why are all these countries that are part of the free trade system, or part of the global capitalist system, impoverished? And Cuba, a country with a centrally planned economy, has achieved a much higher life expectancy.
Okay, I don't know about life expectancy. We're jumping onto a totally different argument. Okay, so like, somebody linked me this article, so just reading it, right? Like, this person literally says, like, damages were done to, like, Mexico's agricultural sector. It doesn't mention the massive gains made in the industrial sector. Hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs were created in Mexico. I think it's like 20% of car imports in the United States come from Mexico. These are jobs that paid citizens more money than the farming jobs, that led to a greater industrialization of Mexico in these parts. She literally, in the next, like, paragraph of this article, just says, well, as a result of some of these agricultural practices, 20 million Mexicans live in food poverty. That's not a causal link. Like, how many Mexicans, like, this is...
They own their own farms beforehand. and now they're in food poverty. They're not even producing their own food.
Wait, so you're telling me that prior to NAFTA, every citizen of Mexico was well-fed, totally well-nourished, had all sorts of, like, no, come on, this is ridiculous.
Ms. Carlson's article is that it made conditions worse. And I think if you look at the narco drug-infested chaos that's involved in Mexico, if that were happening in Venezuela, we'd be told, see, socialism did it. But it happens in Mexico, and we're told, oh, I've even had a lot of libertarians try to tell me that Mexico must be socialist because it's poor, right? Because everyone knows capitalism leads to prosperity. That's simply not the facts.
I can't.
Yeah, I can't. All the 100 people that are feeding me information. I can't. You want to talk about not a fair fight, and I'm knocking down Goliath here, right? He's got his paid team of 100 people trying to debunk me, and I've just got basic data that these arrogant people, they're just so arrogant. They just it couldn't possibly be an argument on our side. It just never occurs to them that we might have facts. But anyway, we'll continue.
I can't actually I can't argue against a New York Times op-ed on this.
Let's stay away from doing that.
If you want, we can dig through, because I've read so many
that defends the free market system.
The New York Times does not defend economic. I don't care what the New York Times says about the economic impact. Now, if Krugman or somebody's or Krugman is writing an article or something talking about I'm sure I'm interested in reading that. Or if Borjas is writing something on immigration and
I'm just tap dancing around. He's just desperate, but I have actual data to back up what I'm saying about economics, and he's got everybody knows that the free market is the best. Everybody knows. That's all he's got, and his whole team of 100 people. That's all they've got.
Submits an op-ed, but random people writing articles in the New York Times. I'm going to appeal to the wider studies that look at NAFTA's economic impact, or we can read things from the Council of Foreign Relations, or we can read things that are published in different economic journals to see the actual impact. I'm appealing to a single opinion article on the New York Times.
I think that people throughout those sources you listed would agree about the conditions in many of the capitalist countries of the world. I mean, this is the CIA World Fact Book. I just read you the life expectancies throughout the countries nearby Cuba and compared them. What?
What does that prove? What does life expectancy prove?
Yeah, right. Who cares if people die sooner? I mean, okay. All right. It doesn't matter, right? Life expectancy, who cares about that?
Wait,
right?
What do you think I just asked? Wait, what was the question I just asked?
You said, what does life expectancy prove?
Okay. Do you think that means I want people to die early?
No, but apparently you're saying it doesn't matter how long people live, right?
No, what I'm asking you is, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually reduced him to saying, what does life expectancy prove? That's how desperate he was. Well, sure, people live longer in Cuba than in all these capitalist countries, but what does that even mean? I mean, what does it really mean that things are better if people are not dying? I mean, I completely brought him to his knees. What does life expectancy prove?
What I'm asking you is,
when you're improving people's life expectancy and their access to healthcare and their quality of life, that's a good thing. But what does it prove? Okay, what does it prove?
What I'm saying is that just because you see an increase in life
expectancy, we're going around in circles here. Honestly, I don't know if we should keep going. I mean, we're just kind of repeating ourselves. But
okay, just as a quick thing, just because life expectancy improves, one, that's not even necessarily reflective of positive underlying things, and two, it doesn't necessarily mean you can attribute it solely to an economic organization or a particular government. So, for example, one country might have access to more food than another country. That country might become more obese, and you might see a decrease in their life expectancy. Type 2 diabetes can lead to anywhere from a 7 to 13-year decrease on your lifespan, right? So if you were to compare the life expectancy of two countries like that, this is just one example out of 50 trillion potential hypotheticals. Maybe the increase in immigration to the United States, the lower average life expectancy of, say, African Americans or Hispanic people are keeping the life expectancy of the United States down compared to other socialist countries. Just appealing to one stat and saying, well, the life expectancy in Cuba is higher than the life expectancy in the United States, that doesn't prove anything. So when I ask, well, what does that mean? That stat is totally meaningless.
I don't think Cuba's life expectancy is higher than the United States. I think it's pretty close, but I don't think it's higher. I'm reading to you from The Guardian, November 27th, 2016. Quote, Cuba's literacy rate is at 100%, and its life expectancy parallels first world nations, despite limited funding and supplies. The country's ratio of doctors to patients, its proactively community-centered approach to healthcare has long been the envy of Western countries, not the least the UK. I think that's an example of central planning improving people's lives.
Okay. Mic drop. Yeah, and there were just so many moments like that where, these people's arrogance is their ultimate weakness, right? They think that, you know, they have this arrogance. They assume that there's only one side of the story, that you know, everybody knows that all the countries we're told to hate are bad, and everybody knows that, you know, America is the best, and you know, everybody doesn't know that. But it just never occurs to these people, because they're fucking conformists and they're cowards, and they've never questioned authority, and they've never had an original thought in their lives. They're just little obedient sheep. And that's how they got where they are. And that's how they got straight A's in school. And that's how they got themselves into the position to get blasted all across social media. Never occurs to them there might be another side of the story, because we have an education system in this country that is designed to weed out people that can actually think. And it is designed to punish and penalize people who actually care about this stuff. And is designed to reward non-thinking, conformist idiots. And people like Destiny get to the top. You think that he's just the best video game player that ever existed? No, he's somebody who's been groomed, right? He's somebody who's been groomed. If you want to watch the entire debate, you can watch the whole thing if you have the stomach for it. You know, but I many times brought him down. I many times pinned him. I mean, it's like a wrestling match, you know, and that he's trying to pin me and I'm trying to pin him. And many times throughout that debate, I pinned him. Because it never occurred to him that I might have a strong argument in my favor. There might actually be facts or information to counter what he thinks. And that's the problem with these people, right? Is that they, you know, are like that. But anyway, so I did that debate with Destiny. And that was interesting, you know, and that immediately I gained thousands of subscribers on this YouTube channel. Then the pandemic happened, and all of a sudden, you know, I was streaming on the weekends because I had to go to the office every day, the RT studio. But then the pandemic happened, and I was working from home. And you're ahead of me, Cameron. Wow, you must have been following very closely for a long time. Then Vaush went after me, and Vaush was running this line about basically everybody who supports Stalin, everyone who supports North Korea, everyone who supports actually existing socialist governments is just the same as a white supremacist and just the same as a Nazi. And he was running that line, and I debated Vaush, and I debated him. And, you know, I mean, I pointed out all the great people throughout American history who, leaders of the civil rights movement, W.E.B. Du Bois, Langston Hughes, who else? Helen Keller, and you're calling all of them Nazis. That's ridiculous, right? It's a ridiculous position, right? That if you can be a socialist, but if you ever associate with any actually socialist country, you're just like Hitler, and that's a ridiculous position. And this is a guy who claims to support the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers love North Korea more than anybody. The Black Panthers, it's just a very easily debunked position. You can watch my debate with Vaush. I immediately, again, after I debated Vaush, my channel got bigger. And, I started growing, and we started to gain momentum. So then I had the idea that maybe I could use the way they were making me infamous. I could use the way they were making me infamous in my favor. And I was then approached by some people, not going to say who gave me some information. And I became aware that this guy, right? I'll put his face on here. We can all boo, right? This is a notoriously bad dude who mainstream media treats with credibility. He's got a awful smile, and he's, this guy's like a modern day Leon Trotsky, basically. His family are Russian Jews who fled the Soviet Union. He hates Russia on an ethnic level, right? He hates Russians, and he was in a religious group, and he betrayed that religious group and got lots of attention for doing so. So he's basically like Trotsky. He's a professional traitor. You know, he's a professional traitor for a living, right? Somebody who stabs his friends and his community in the back. This guy, we'll put it on. I'm waiting for this guy. Boo, Steve Hasan. Steve Hasan, yes, who talks like this with his, you think my voice is nasally. Give me a break. Yes, I'm Steve Hasan. Steve Hasan, I hate Russians, and I used to be part of the Unification Church, and then I made lots of money talking against the Unification Church, stabbing my friends in the back, and now I was only in the Unification Church for 2 years, but I've milked being in it. I've milked being in it, for millions of dollars, and now I go around as an expert on cults and calling people cults and making lots of money and he is just a professional wrecker. If there's ever been anybody who's a wrecker, it's Steve Hasan. He even wrecked the other anti-cult people, right? Even the other anti-cult people don't like him, right? Steve Hasan, he's this Jewish guy from New York City who joined the Unification Church in the 70s, when the Unification Church was a really big thing in New York City and around the country in the 1970s. He joined it for 2 years. And he quit. He's got a whole story. I'm not going to waste my time going into great detail. But then he got involved with something called the Cult Awareness Network. And they started making money kidnapping people, and they made lots of money, that if your family member joined a group that you considered to be a cult, including communist groups. They went after the Democratic Workers' Party, which was a Maoist communist group. They went after the RCP, the Revolutionary Communist Party. They go after all kinds of people, and he and a guy, what was the Ted Patrick and a few other people, they started a kidnapping business where they would kidnap people. That's called false imprisonment. That's a crime. And he admits he was involved in forcible deprogramming, where basically if your legal adult college-age child joined the Unification Church or Scientology or the Democratic Workers' Party or the LaRouche movement or the Nation of Islam or some group and your parents didn't like it, good question. You would pay Steve Hasan, lots of money, and they would drive up and find the person with a van and abduct them into the van and lock them in a room and browbeat them until they changed their religious beliefs. And it didn't always work. And I've met Scientologists who, they're still Scientologists, even though Steve Hasan's people kidnapped them. I've met unificationists that are still unificationists, even though Steve Hasan's people kidnapped them. He did this, and his associate, Ted Patrick, went to jail for doing it. Ted Patrick was a black man who started the operation. Ted Patrick, he went to jail for kidnapping. Steve never did. Steve never did any jail time for some reason, and Ted Patrick is kind of famous. There's like little documentaries about him, but you don't see Ted Patrick on CNN, but Steve, and eventually his organization, the Cult Awareness Network, was sued out of existence for violating people's civil rights. There was a waitress, I believe it was a waitress in Arizona, and they kidnapped her because her family didn't like the church she had joined, and they sued for violation of civil rights. And you look at the details, the group eventually went bankrupt, because they had violated so many people's rights. But Steve has still got loads of money, and he lives in the Boston area. He never got prosecuted, and he never got charged, and he's on every channel. He's on CNN, and after January 6th, they rolled him out to say, oh, Donald Trump is the leader of a political cult, and we need to outlaw Donald Trump because he's using hypnosis through his speeches to convince people that they're being brainwashed. And, and it's just like they roll this guy out. He's all over Netflix. Netflix is obsessed with cults, and, he's just this professional traitor, this professional wrecker, who made his career, destroying organizations, manipulating people, and he's a spook, and he is intelligence connected like you wouldn't believe. For example, his mentor was Robert J. Lifton, who was the top military psychiatrist who studied brainwashing with the CIA's Project MK Ultra. That's his personal mentor. In addition to that, if you listen to him, he says, I think that China is the world's largest political cult. Well, that's convenient. And I think that Russia is a political cult. I wonder why he never goes after the Nazi groups in Ukraine that are, sending people to die to fight against Russia in the name of white nationalism. He somehow, those Nazis in Ukraine, I've never heard him once talk about them as a political cult. And what about all those extremist groups that were involved in bringing down the Syrian government, right? Al-Jilani, the current president of Syria, who literally danced on 9/11 as an al-Qaeda terrorist, who's now the president of Syria. I never saw him do a story about, the groups that, that recruit children as young as 11 and 12 that were funded by our tax dollars to go to Syria and bring down the Syrian government. He never says, the leader of Syria, Al-Jilani, is running a political cult. No, he never brings that up. He's a spook. He is a complete spook. And even his origin story, even when he got famous after going after the Unification Church, it was at a time that Park Chung-hee, the military dictator of South Korea, was at odds with U.S. imperialism. He was developing his own nuclear weapons. South Korea had a nuclear program in the 1970s, and the USA didn't want it because that would have caused the U.S. troops to leave because South Korea would have had its own atomic bomb. And the Korea Gate scandal, really, that's what the cult scare in America was about. There were two events, the Jim Jones thing, which was an awful Jonestown, and then the Korea Gate scandal, which was that, that South Korea had built up its economy, as part of, they had a Bonapartist military regime under Park Chung-hee, and they were becoming more independent. And the Carter administration wanted to bring down the government of Park Chung-hee. And so they launched a public relations campaign against South Korea. And the primary target, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was a businessman named Tongson Park. But it was a number of Korean business owners and stuff. But they had to somehow get Americans to really hate South Korea. So a lot of young hippies and a lot of young people were joining the Unification Church. So they had congressional hearings about the Unification Church, and they made Steve, the center of attention. They made Steve the center of attention to talk about he was brainwashed. He was in a cult, so basically he was involved even back then. He was involved in deep state shit and intelligence stuff. He's always been a spook, right? And I found out that he was advising the BreadTube community. I was presented with evidence by people that shall not be named, information that Dr. Steve Hasan was sitting behind closed doors with Destiny and telling Destiny how to do his debates, was advising ContraPoints on how to make her documentaries, and that he was kind of the mastermind behind BreadTube. And of course, BreadTube doesn't want to advertise this for hilarious reasons, one of which is he is anti-trans. You can't make this up, right? He's this woke liberal, but he has talked about transgenderism being a cult, and families have paid him to untrans their relatives. So BreadTube can't really be associated with him. It's a little embarrassing that he's got a record as being anti-transgender and they're transgender obsessed. So it's kind of hilarious, but he's got a record of being anti-transgender. So they don't want to, they don't want to make him well known. So I said, you know what? These BreadTube people have been like the best friends of my community and my YouTube channel ever. Every time I debated one of them, I would get thousands more followers and all of that. And now I've got this inside information. So I said, I'm writing a book, and I wrote this book, BreadTube Serves Imperialism. And I thought, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to work? And a couple weeks after it came out, one of these clowns bought the book and just did a whole stream reading it. And it's frustrating for me because I actually care about what I do. I knew what I was doing. I was baiting them. Okay. I was baiting them. I knew they would take the bait, and the book blew up. And you don't even want to know how much money, how much CPI stuff has been paid for by, the money that came in from the BreadTube book. You don't even want to know. And I mean, it was brilliant, but at the same time, it is frustrating because there were so many YouTube channels of them reading my book and, and sitting there and just misrepresenting my words. For example, the first chapter, first of all, none of them read anything but the first chapter. The vast majority of the people who read the BreadTube book only read the first chapter. And the first chapter is called Who and What is BreadTube? And it was just me explaining who they are, and like you will watch them and they would read it, right? And I'm just going over, I just am giving a profile. I start out with ContraPoints. I start out Hbomberguy and all this. And like I mentioned, for example, Hbomberguy has had Chelsea Manning on his stream. So they'd read this out. Chelsea Manning's anti-war. And he says that's proof that they serve imperialism. He's retarded. He's done. It's just like that. Hours of them taking sentences I say and saying, by that he means, and therefore he's an idiot, right? And it's really insulting and obnoxious, right? Just hours and hours of, or they would do something. They would read the first half of a sentence and say, oh, well, he's so dumb, he doesn't know. And then they would read the next half of the sentence, and I would say exactly what they said I didn't say. Like, it would just be, and then none of them ever read anything but the first chapter, because why would they care about facts? Most of this book is not about people. Most of this book is about what BreadTube believes. The first chapter is called Who and What is BreadTube? The second chapter is called Redefining Capitalism and Socialism. The third chapter is called Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. It's about what fascism actually is. The fourth chapter is about left pessimism. This book is largely not about people. It's about ideas. It's about what socialism is and imperialism. It's about what capitalism is. It's about what fascism actually means. It's about the achievements of the Soviet Union. That's mainly what the book is about. Most of these BreadTube clowns didn't care what the book was about. All they cared about was, oh my God, you mentioned these YouTube channels that I watch, or my YouTube channel, and it was really sad. It really, Peter Coffin has this brilliant critique of fandom. A lot of these BreadTube people don't care about the truth. Right. They're not interested in ideology. They're just kind of, they like certain voices on the internet. They like to listen to them. They're fans of certain voices. And because they're fans of these certain voices, that's what they care about. And it's like, I'm talking about these ideas. I'm talking about socialism and anti-imperialism and stuff like that. They didn't care about any of that. So I wrote a book that's mainly about economics and all of this. And I mean, these BreadTube people, they're wrong and ignorant on many points. Number one, none of them had ever heard any critique of capitalism other than some people own the factory and some people work in the factory, and that's no fair. Or some people have lots of money and some people don't have lots of money, and that's no fair. None of them had ever heard of the tendency of the falling rate of profit. None of them had ever heard of the problem of overproduction. None of them had ever heard of imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. None of them had ever heard of any of that. All they knew, their critique of capitalism was like it is like the caricature of what a conservative thinks of when they think of an obnoxious socialist. Some people have more money. That's no fair. Well, I've spent my whole life studying this stuff. And, in China, there's plenty of people that have lots more money than everybody else. Every day in China in 2020 or in 2019, a new billionaire was created. Socialist countries are not making everyone equal. And furthermore, the idea, and then their whole thing is, well, none of the socialist countries are actually socialist. Socialism is just an employee stock ownership program. It's just when the employees become the owners of the company. And I've said, no, socialism is when profits are no longer in command. It is when the economy is no longer centered around profit, when you have a centrally planned economy working in the interest of all of society, not the profits of a wealthy few. Right? And just because profits are shared does not change that it's capitalism. And, I critique them on that. And I just, none of them knew anything about Marxism or socialism. And that's what most of the book was about. But none of them cared about that. They all just cared about, anyway. But it was a brilliant, brilliant operation. So, and it just blew up. It blew up. And they were all reacting to it and talking about it. And like, there are so many things in this book that, you know, all I knew about at the time that I wrote the book, the only bit of information I had was Steve Hasan. That's all I had. That's it. I mean, I just knew that Steve Hasan was their big guru. I knew they knew nothing about socialism and communism and anti-imperialism. And so, you know, I debunked them. So after I wrote my debunk, things started happening. One thing that happened was Gray Zone found a smoking gun. Philosophy Tube, which is one of the big people, is literally paid by the British intelligence foundations. She was literally getting a paycheck to do her videos from the British deep state, from the British royal family, and from the British government foundation that was funding terrorism against Syria. And Gray Zone did a great expose about how I was 100% correct, that, you know, that BreadTube was on the payroll, not even of the American government, but of the British government. You know, and you can read that Gray Zone BreadTube, that Philosophy Tube, Abigail Thorne, right? It's, you know, Gray Zone revealed that they literally are being paid by British intelligence. That was a big revelation. Then, you know, so, you know, I said BreadTube serves imperialism. The British Empire was paying them. So that's like the first amount of proof that I was right. The second bit of proof that I was right was, and this was interesting, is that ContraPoints, who made fun of the notion that she was an intelligence spook. Oh, that's hilarious. ContraPoints literally did an entire video with Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hillary Clinton, you know, we saw he died, who cheered for the destruction of Libya. Hillary and Chelsea Clinton did an hour-long piece just about how great ContraPoints was and how ContraPoints deprograms people. And that was classic. But then the icing on the cake was this guy, Caleb Kane. This guy. So Caleb Kane is, I mean, this guy is just, I mean, I almost feel sorry for this guy. I mean, he's so pathetic. I mean, he's just, you know, it's like, I used to be a conservative. And what did he do when he was a conservative? Well, I listened to conservative podcasts, you know, on like one of his, you know, his like confessions, you know, what activism did he do as a conservative? I almost went to Charlottesville. He almost went to Charlottesville. Like, that's, oh my, we got the Grand Wizard of the KKK right here. You know, his whole story is like, when he was a conservative, he listened to conservative podcasts and then he stopped. That's all he did. He's never done anything, but he's the great story. You know, he almost went to Charlottesville. He almost went to a rally one time. But anyway, so they bring him on one of these channels to like debunk me. And he says, oh, that Caleb, he's got it all wrong. He's got it all wrong. I've only met Steve Hasan one time. It's not just Steve Hasan. It's this whole section of the FBI called combating extremism. That's who we work with. Caleb's an idiot. What is he talking about? He just spills the beans right there. And he thinks he's debunking me. That all I knew about was Steve Hasan. And he admitted that there's a whole group called Combating Extremism, Exiting Extremism. There's a whole wing of the FBI that is working with BreadTube to deprogram conservatives, to push back against conservative messaging and pro-Russia messaging. And and he thinks that somehow is like sticking it to me. It's amazing. And if someone can dig up that clip for me, please do. I want to show that clip on here. I've seen that clip and I want to show it on this channel. I just want to clip it because it is so epic. And the arrogance of these people at the same time, like, he doesn't even have the wherewithal to go, wow, Caleb wrote a book saying that BreadTube serves imperialism. And he's saying that we have ties to the deep state. So if I go on a podcast and admit that we're working with the FBI, that's making his point better than he made. All he knows about is Steve Hasan. But like, there's no one there. Again, there's this level of like extreme arrogance with these people that it's like because they're rich, right? Because they grew up in the suburbs and because they, you know, they I don't know what it is, because they're rich kids and because they're obedient, conforming, people that, that have never questioned authority and have never, dared take a heroic stand in their lives, right? And they're just little obedient people. Like, it just never occurs to them that people who disagree with them might have a good point or anything. So it's like he thinks he's owning me, right? Smugnorance, right? Smugnorance. And he thinks he's owning me. And so he gets on there and he's just like, oh yeah, well, it's a whole wing of the FBI called Exiting Extremism. That's who we work with. It's not just Steve Hasan. I mean, and again, the arrogance, like, so this channel blows up, and we start building the Center for Political Innovation. We just started building an organization, and these people, they created a monster, and we appreciate it. And at this point, what's crazy is they're all gone. They're all gone, and they've all kind of had their tragic comeuppance. And I almost feel sorry for them in a way. I mean, they've gone after me very viciously, but they haven't destroyed me, right? And I mean, I guess, but there's an element of like karma, what goes around comes around, so to speak. So they went after me in vicious ways, went after my family, and, paid people that I knew to, like, offered people to make their social media get bigger if they would just talk against me. I mean, it was really, they must have spent a lot of money to do it, and they must have been cooperating with, and I don't want to go into detail, but, they've really gone after me. They all kind of had their comeuppance, in a way. For example, Vaush, right? I mean, Vaush, right? They went after me. They attacked me on my personal life. In my book, I pointed out that, that it was at the time a little weird that Vaush was constantly bringing up references to child pornography and why child pornography, in his opinion, should be legal and stuff. And I just thought that was odd. Well, a couple of years ago, Vaush revealed, he was sharing his screen of his laptop, and some images showed up on the screen. I didn't do that. I mean, that was all him. And, I mean, it's gross. I'm not even going to go into great detail about it, because I honestly, it's sad. The fact that somebody would, be that way. And on top of that, the fact that they would have so little self-control, you know what I'm saying? That they couldn't even, cover it up. I mean, that reveals a level of sexual addiction that is very extreme. And honestly, I don't want to take pleasure in Vaush's downfall, because, I mean, that's really sad. It's really sad. And many people suspected that Vaush had gotten busted, right? That he'd gotten arrested. And the fact that he lives in Beverly Hills, the fact that his father's a wealthy Hollywood producer, that he was compromised from the beginning. Right. And, that he, maybe, they basically, they caught him and they said, okay, we'll either prosecute you for your, habit or tendencies, or we'll make you a famous internet socialist who repeats our propaganda and talking points. And, and it's sad, it's really, really sad that he felt a need, that, first of all, my mistake in dealing with all these people was, and you watch this, I see these debates every so often. I'll revisit them. I try not to, because this is an important chapter in the history of our organization, but it's also kind of cringe. Like, even that Destiny debate that I showed you all, it's kind of cringe. But like, my weakness was I was trying my hardest to find common ground with these people, to get these people to like me. That was my goal. I said to Destiny, I said, can I call you Steve? And I wasn't trying to epically destroy these people. I thought, these are people that are talking about socialism on the internet. And wouldn't it be great if I could get them to think a little bit differently? I didn't go into these debates with the BreadTube people with the attitude, I'm going to epically destroy and kill these people. That's the attitude they had toward me. They were assigned to kill somebody. They were assigned to destroy somebody's reputation. They failed to do it, but I wasn't mean enough in back to them. For example, when I debated Vaush, right? The premise of our debate was he was saying that anyone who defends the Soviet Union, anybody who, anyone who supports China or North Korea is the same as a Nazi. So I just listed off various people, who supported the Soviet Union, like Albert Einstein, like Shostakovich, like Helen Keller, like W.B. Du Bois, and said those people are obviously not Nazis. And his response was, well, that's just an appeal to authority. Now, what should I have done at that point? Well, I'm me, and I was trying to win over his audience, so I just kind of moved on. The correct answer in that kind of debate is I should have said, do you even know what an appeal to authority is, Vaush? Let's look it up. You're retarded. You don't even know what that is. You just said it's an appeal to authority. That's clearly not that. You're retarded. You're dumb. That's not me. As somebody who does real political organizing, I have learned that if somebody disagrees with me and they make a really obvious mistake, you don't rub their face in it because that's what a jerk does, right? Would you? And again, in my mind, I wanted to win over Vaush. I wanted to win over Destiny. And so the way I've been trained to act is if somebody makes a really obvious mistake like that, right? They are saying, I'm saying blatantly that, you are saying all the people that defend the Soviet Union are the same as Nazis. I just listed a bunch of people that are clearly not Nazis. And your response is to go, that's an appeal to authority. And you clearly just don't know what this, they all have a list of like silly high school debate club, fallacies in their head. Right. Destiny always says, well, that's whataboutism. And that's, and many times in my debate with him, I said, that is not whataboutism. And they have a list of like comebacks for anything you say. Well, they say, well, that's whataboutism, or that's an appeal to authority. Well, he doesn't know what an appeal to authority is. And what I should have done is I should have just slapped in his face, you don't know what an appeal to authority is, and just been an absolute dick to him. But I didn't do that because that's not how I treat people. If you are going to work in the real world with people, you can't act that way, right? No one is ever going to work with you. If somebody says something factually inaccurate, or misrepresents a concept and you just smack them in the face with it, that's what I should have done. But I didn't do that. And that was always my weakness with these people, as much as these people got on my nerves. And honestly, I regret kind of getting down to their level many times on these streams. There were times that I was just reacting to the vicious cancel culture campaign that was leveled against me, that I tried to talk like them. I tried to be mean in the way that they're mean. And I'm just not that, right? I'm just not them. I'm just different. And the main thing is I'm building a real political movement. They are not. They're just internet personalities. They're basically professional cyber bullies that got a gig. And I was too nice to, go after these people, the way that they went after me. And they all, they went after me. They've done so much. I mean, I could tell you, I could tell you everything these people did, but it's just like, and there was a lot of people, I'll just tell you, the shallowness of a lot of the people in the BreadTube community is amazing. Like, for example, one of these people, one of these guys, he's the guy who lives in Vietnam and is married to a Vietnamese woman. What is his name? I can't even remember his name. He knew I was right. I mean, he's living in Vietnam. He's married to a woman who's a Vietnamese communist who understands what, the communist economic theories of Vietnam are. And he said to me many times, this is not fair what they're doing to you. Yeah, they're lying and misrepresenting your position. But then people started going after him. And he basically just said, oh, well, now people are associating me with you. And so I just have to. And then he turned against me, and there was like a stupid dig at me in one of his videos. He knows that these people were lying about me, but he just didn't, it was just, well, I couldn't possibly stand against the mob. I couldn't possibly stand against the mob. I couldn't possibly have the courage to go against these people. And there were a lot of people like that in my life, people I'd met over the years that were like leftists that I'd met in communist spaces, who knew I was not a white supremacist, who knew I was not a white nationalist or whatever. And I mean, you know, the posts they would make about me, Caleb's a Nazi, they would take things I said out of context. And there were so many people I knew who just blocked me and cut me off, not knowing that I was not, you know, I was not what these people were saying, but, you know, they just didn't have the courage to stand up to bots. And that was the other thing, is that, you know, I understand, right? If you have different friends, like in your life, you sometimes are forced to pick sides. But there were so many people who, there was no real friend of theirs that told them they had to cut me off. There was no, you know, person that they had to, you know, there was simply, they just were scared to go against numbers on the internet. And that is unbelievable, right? It's like, oh, this person I know has posts that have hundreds of thousands of likes and tweets on them saying they're bad. I have to just stop being their friend. And that is really pathetic, right? And it's like, it's one thing if, you know, if you have two friends, they're fighting, but if you turn on a friend because you want to please numbers, anonymous numbers on the internet, that is really sad. And there's a lot of very, very weak people on the left. There's also the other problem with social media. I'll just say this, is that there were a lot of people who approached me during this time. You know, it's really immoral too. Exactly. Yeah. There were a lot of people who approached me during this time that all they wanted was to be internet famous. Right. And they thought because my social media was rising, it still is. I mean, we're already rising, but because I had a big social media account, that by being my friend, I would make their social media account bigger. And I'm not opposed to that. I you know, Peter Coffin and I have worked together over the years, and I'm happy to boost different people. And, you know, I have no problem collaborating with different social media accounts, but there were a couple people who one of the vicious attacks that came on me was ridiculous. And there were two individuals who I just look at them and I think, you are the dumbest people, right? And they said to me, oh, I'm going to turn against you now because you didn't build my social media enough. And I said, okay, so you know that this thing they're saying about me is not true. But you're mad that I have, and one of these people wanted me to arrange for him to debate with another big social media person. And I wasn't going to do that because I didn't want to antagonize this social media person. I didn't think it would be productive. And he had a very small YouTube channel. He's like, you need to arrange for me to debate so-and-so. I said, I'm not going to do that. And so then when they attacked me with one of their attacks, I've gotten so many attacks. But anyway, when one of these attacks came down, he said, well, I'm turning against you because you never arranged that. And I thought, okay, so you know what they're saying about me is not true, but you're going along with it because of this. Another one of these people, there was one of these losers. I shouldn't say that. I mean, I don't know. It's hard not to get bitter. One of these people was, I guess I won't say what country. He was in a European country. He was like in his early 20s, and he had started a political party with him and like 3 other people. And he and these 3 other people were a political party. And I said, maybe you should start a think tank, maybe do something a little bit, political party, and then he wanted to write a book about, he had come up with this new form of Marxism called Caleb Maupin thought. And I said to him, don't call it that. That's a little cringe. I said, maybe you can write a book about my beliefs. And I was trying to work with him to maybe write a book about my beliefs that wouldn't be so cringe. And he made a video of himself and his 3 other people in this European country that call themselves the Worker Communist Party or something like that. And he wanted me to show it at one of our CPI events. And I just said, well, I don't know if I want to do that. And I was a little bit nervous about him writing this book about Caleb Maupin thought and then people making fun of that. And it wasn't very good what he sent me. And I kind of tried to tell him, you don't form a new political party with 3 other people. You form a think tank, a party but anyway, and then he sent me a video representing his party of 3 other people, and he wanted me to show it when we had a CPI event, and I declined. So then when they attacked me, he came back at me with, "You wouldn't show my video, you wouldn't highlight," and it's like, okay, so you these people are lying about me, but and both of those people, I mean, screw them. I mean, and it's like, these people, they never really appreciated anything that I was saying. They just wanted to be more internet famous, right? And they just came along, and it's really sad, right? And that's why social media is brain rot. I'll just tell you that much. I'm only on here because I want to recruit you to CPI. I have no illusions about this channel blowing up and becoming big. The internet is rigged, and most of it's not real. I tell you, the overwhelming of likes and shares is not real, right? Yeah, Thought Slime, right? Thought Slime would go after me with these videos that would have hundreds of thousands of views. And he made, like, I think he's done like 4 videos at least. It was 2 to 3 videos going after me, saying I would say something completely normal, and he would say that, I would talk about capitalism and its monopoly stage and the rule of banks. And he would say, he's saying Jews run the world. And, at one point in his streams, I mean, I couldn't believe this. He said that Marx never called for a centrally planned economy, he said that's an idea invented by Lenin called democratic centralism. And I was just like, well, democratic centralism is about how you organize a political party. The Communist Manifesto itself says centralize the means of production. Marx spent all this time writing about the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And he would just say these things that were just so easily debunked by anyone who knew anything. But, he's got a bunch of bots blowing him up, right? He's famous on the internet, and that was the scary thing about this, is these people could say false things, and it didn't matter, right? I mean, anybody knows that Marx, first of all, these people had never heard of the tendency of the falling rate of profit. They'd never heard of the problem of overproduction, which has got like big paragraphs about it in the Communist Manifesto, right? And they would act like it didn't exist, and these people, and it was always in this smug tone, you're so stupid and all this. It was always, always crazy. And I mean, yeah, there were just so many of these people, and they've all kind of had their comeuppance, Thought Slime, he had this character named Sophie from Mars. It was like this young transgender person from Britain that he was trying to make internet famous. And then it came out that, a couple other people came forward and said that, well, I don't even want to repeat what was said, but it was a lot worse than what was even being alleged against me. And they vanished very quickly. And, and I will say the thing that really just exposed how evil these people were, right? It's one thing if these people, I mean, there were 2 things, I guess. First, the Ukraine war happened, right? The Ukraine war happened, and all these people were cheering for the Nazis in Ukraine, right? And Vaush was doing whole like streams about cheering for the Azov battalion and the Nazis in Ukraine. And that's when they decided they had to destroy me. And that's when they hit me, harder, was shortly after the special military operation got going. Destiny wanted a rematch debate with me, and I wouldn't do it. I refused because I'd already beaten him. And why did I need to give him a chance to undo my victory? So I declined to have another debate with Destiny. And it was after the special military operation got going. They really started going after me. But they were all cheering for the Nazis in Ukraine. And then the other thing was the Uhuru raids happened, right? And they raided the Uhuru movement. And all of these people started doing propaganda for the FBI. And what they did was that there is another organization that broke away from the Uhuru movement called Black Hammer. And Black Hammer did a lot more social media stuff. And Black Hammer was accused of all kinds of stuff, which I guess, I mean, I don't know anything about the details of the case, but it looks like all the charges have been dropped. So, I mean, it looks like, they were accused of like serious crimes, but all those charges have been dropped. So they may not have even been guilty. I know nothing about them. But regardless, there were a lot of internet rumors about this other organization that's not Uhuru. And so based on these rumors about this other organization, they said that Uhuru was the same as Black Hammer. And so it was okay that the FBI raided their homes and was trying to jail them for being pro-Russia. And it was unbelievable because, you know, I mean, even if Uhuru had been the same as Black Hammer, they didn't charge Uhuru with anything except their speech in favor of Russia, and they raided their homes and all this. So these people, everyone's a racist, everyone's a white supremacist, they love the Black Panthers, but here you have a black socialist organization that is being targeted by the FBI, and they don't even frame them for drugs. They don't accuse them of it's just for their anti-imperialist speech. And these people are such pathetic, evil shills that they lie and say because of sexual rumors about a group that isn't the same, they support the FBI doing this and criminalizing speech. I mean, that at that point, these people were just government agents. And I mean, everything I wrote was really true. And so, and at that point, that the evil nature of these people became very, very apparent, you know, and the fact that I was being blackmailed, you know, when we had the convention where we honored Uhuru, we honored Tara Reid, and we honored Uhuru right after the FBI raids. And I was getting blackmailing phone calls, right? There were certain people, you know, former CPI members, you know, that they had approached and were offering to blow up their social media and make them famous, who were blackmailing me. One of them said on the phone, "You got to cancel the conference. You got to cancel the conference." I said, "No, we're not canceling the conference." You know, I mean, they were collaborating with the FBI at that point. I mean, and these are the kind of people that would have like killed Dr. Martin Luther King. And you were there. It was an awesome conference. It was tremendous. And I did it again, you know, kind of like that debate with Destiny, where that was me against 100 people. That conference I did under a huge amount of pressure. I was being blackmailed around very, very, you know, below the belt. You know, you talk about hitting below the belt, you know, I mean, what these people did to me was very, very evil. And it's been debunked and it's not worth revisiting, but like, you know, when I talk about hitting somebody below the belt, you know, I mean, things that have nothing to do with politics, first of all, but are just personal, childish attacks, you know, of just, you know, what these people did was very, very evil. And the fact that I was able to do the conference under that kind of pressure with people like blackmailing me to cancel the conference shows that I am very, very strong. Right. And look, folks, there's a reason that I'm on TV. I'm on TV almost every day. If I'm not on RT, I'm on Press TV. I'm on Latin American TV. I'm on Turkish TV. I'm on Iranian TV. there's a reason, right? I mean, I have abilities that are exceptional. Okay. And it doesn't mean I've got a lot of flaws too. I'm not trying to tell you I'm perfect, but I have abilities that are exceptional. And I was brought up to be very, very humble. And again, that's one of my flaws. I was brought up that you don't act boastful. You don't, you know, laud your achievements over other people. But unfortunately, you know, the way I've been attacked, apparently, you know, despite the fact that I videotaped police beating up a young African-American woman and got her acquitted in juvenile court, despite the fact that I've been, you know, I was talking about Black Lives Matter before Twitter had even been invented, and I was doing stuff, the fact that, I mean, I have a record a mile long as an anti-imperialist activist. BreadTube really worked hard to convince people that I'm just a Klansman. I'm a white nationalist, white supremacist, and that, you know, that basically that all I've ever done is go around trying to build a white supremacist movement to support dictators and running a cult or something like that. I mean, it's just, you know, vile. And so I have unfortunately learned that you have to talk about what you've done. I mean, this book that we recently published, right? I mean, my face is on the cover, right? Part of me feels like, oh, you shouldn't put your face on the cover of a book. Well, no, I should put my face on the cover of a book because I have something to offer. You know, I do have something to offer, and I have withstood and I have done things that nobody else has done. Right. And I have met the Russian president, and I interviewed the president of Iran, and I risked my life on a ship trying to bring medical aid to Yemen in 2015. And I mean, I have withstood and I have done things that, it's amazing. You know, people complain sometimes at me, and, you know, and it's kind of funny. I've had people complain and say, "Oh, Caleb, you're so sensitive." It's like, if you have the people who say I'm too sensitive or whatever, you know, if you had faced anything near what I had faced, you would have fallen apart, right? I mean, I lost friends. My reputation's been run through the mud. I've been threatened. I've been blackmailed. I've been, I've had the FBI knock on my door. I've been through a lot, and I withstand. So I need to learn to put my face on the cover of books, and you need to learn to show people my face and tell them, you know what, that's Caleb on the cover of my books, because he should be there. He's my leader. He's the leader of our organization. He has abilities that no one else has. He has the ability to withstand in ways that other people don't have. We have to just do it, right? I've learned, the other thing I've learned over the years is, generally, if anyone calls me arrogant or narcissistic, let's just talk about this. Let's just go on a side stream here, right? The word narcissist, right? Think about that word, narcissist. It points to a reality that is that there's something called primary narcissism. When a baby is born, a baby is really selfish, because if it doesn't get fed, it dies. And a baby relies on a parent to feed it. And a baby isn't completely conscious of other people. It knows about its caregiver, its parent, which is the first connection it ever has, right? The connection with the person feeding you and taking care of you and changing your diapers when you're a baby is really important in your development. That's the first connection you're ever going to have as a person. But when you are a baby, they have what's called infantile omnipotence or primary narcissism. When you're a baby, you feel like the most important thing in the world, and you are really selfish, and you feel really powerful because all you have to do is cry and get fed. That's called primary narcissism or infantile omnipotence. What happens as you start walking and you grow up is that you get smacked by reality. In some cases, literally smacked, and you realize you're not very powerful, right? And that's just a harsh reality. And I mean, we're nicer to kids than we used to be, but generally, the terrible twos, etc., is a child coming to terms with the fact they are not omnipotent, and it is their primary narcissism being broken down, right? And that's what they talk about. And I'm never going to have children, but this is important if you want to understand human development. So after your primary narcissism is defeated, you then spend the rest of your life, not even the rest of your childhood, not even the rest of your we're talking the rest of your life, in a process called ego development, which is you figure out how powerful you actually are. You learn your own strength. And it's a long process. And, older people, I will say, people that are really old, often are really, really, really insightful in how to deal with people, because they've been around so long and they've dealt with people their whole life. Actually, elderly people often are the best in dealing with people because they've just been dealing with people their whole lives. You talk to an older person who's been a teacher, an older person who's run a business, you just, after a while, you learn to deal with people. And some of the older people I've known in my life, even I think about my grandparents, but even not just my grandparents, some of the older activists I knew, the older you get, you learn to deal with people in a way that, and it's kind of interesting. But anyway, that's the whole story of your life, is this process called ego development. So what narcissism is that after you experience that stage of ego, after your primary narcissism is broken, narcissism is people who their ego development freezes. That's what narcissism is. It is your ego development freezes. And that for some reason, maybe the process of who knows, for various reasons, and it could be biological, that's what narcissism is. It's people whose ego development freezes after their primary narcissism is broken, after they're like initially defeated by society and they realize they're not infantile omnipotent. Their primary narcissism is defeated, and their ego development stops. They don't continue starting to understand how strong they actually are, and their ego development is frozen, and they're in that kind of defeated state, and they're stuck in that childlike defeated state of knowing they're not the most powerful person in the world and being terrified of it. And their ego development, it proceeds at a very slow pace, or it's frozen, right? That's what narcissism is. And if you've ever dealt with a narcissist, there are certain things that narcissists do that are blatant. One thing that a narcissist does is they never let you talk. They don't listen to you. They're just talking at you the whole time, because it's, but narcissism, and this is the point I'm making, this is a long roundabout way of saying this. One thing about narcissists is that the narcissist that everyone notices, right? People think of narcissists as being very confident. Wrong. People think of narcissists as being most narcissists are what they call deflated narcissists, which is they're insensitive to other people's feelings. They don't think about other people and their needs. They have a very insular, they're kind of cut off from other people. And at the same time, they say they have this attitude of woe is me. Oh, I'm the best and everyone's better than me. They have this like defeated attitude that comes with grandiosity, right? And that is the main form of narcissism that's out there. For example, the Ayn Rand books really played into the feelings that a deflated narcissist has, right? It's like you read the Ayn Rand books and it's like, maybe I'll die and the world will be deprived of my great skill, and it's like this like person who's like, I'm a genius, but the whole world doesn't recognize it. So, and it's like they go through the world in this kind of defeated way with this attitude that I'm better than everybody else and nobody recognizes it. And so I'm just going to hide in this bitter place. That's most narcissists. Okay. That is I would say like 95% of narcissists are like that. You have that 5% of like narcissists that are not defeated, right? Which is that's a whole nother conversation. But that attitude of like, woe is me, I'm an unappreciated person, I'm so great, and that I'm so great and the world doesn't recognize it, and I'm just going to walk around like this. That is the attitude of most people. And one thing that those kind of people always do, and even the performative narcissists, even the healthier narcissists, one thing that almost all narcissists do, narcissists think everyone else is a narcissist. I'm telling you this. If anyone ever calls you a narcissist, it's because they're a narcissist. Because they're jealous of you, right? And they sit there and it's like other people are doing things that they're not doing. Other people are achieving in ways they're not achieving. Well, that's because they're bad. That's because they're narcissists, right? So one of the first signs of a narcissist is that they accuse you of being a narcissist. Number one, because accusing somebody of narcissism is not a really smart thing to do. Does anyone like you? Like, even if someone is a narcissist, do you walk up to someone and say, you're a narcissist? Would anyone like that? No. So why would you do that? You would do that because you don't care about them. You're doing it to like justify about how you feel, which is a very narcissistic thing to do, right? I mean, it's not a wise move. You're not working in your own self-interest. If you perceive someone as a narcissist and you say to them, you are a narcissist, it doesn't help you in any way. Why would you do that? Well, a narcissist would do that because they're not thinking about the impact it has on you. They're just so that you grind their gears so much. So it's already like not a smart move, but it's the kind of dumb move that a narcissist would do. But second of all, why do they think you're a narcissist in the first place? Because you're asserting your own needs. You're accomplishing things for yourself. You're getting attention for yourself. You're doing things. And how dare you? How dare anyone else serve their own needs? How dare anyone else assert their needs? How dare anyone else accomplish anything. How dare anyone do anything other than them? They are the center of the universe, and you existing takes away from their spotlight, takes away from their glory. How dare you? You must be a narcissist, because clearly everyone should just sit back and look at me and be in awe of me and how great I am. And people are looking at you and not me. So you must be a bad person. That's how narcissists think. So the allegation of narcissism is like the primary red flag that someone is a narcissist. Okay. I'm just throwing this out there. So every time I get on here and talk about all the things I've done, right, immediately it's, he's a narcissist. He's bragging. Well, I have to get on here and talk about what I've done because the internet is rigged to convince you that, once upon a time, a guy had a sex scandal, and that's not what happened. But regardless, I have to talk about it, and people should talk about it, and you should talk about it too. And if you're part of this movement and this organization, you should tell people about it. And honestly, the achievements that I've had are monumental, and the effort to conceal them and cover them up and pretend they don't exist is massive. And also, my own humility has been used against me, and so unfortunately, we have to learn to be boastful. I have to learn to put my face on the cover of books. I have to talk about all the things I've done over the years. There's just so many things I've done, and it's like Vaush played video games and all this. And it's like, and I mean, I just have to, if I don't talk about what I've done, who's going to talk about them? So, that's part of why this book is out there. It is to go over. I mean, I've given speeches to thousands of oil workers in Brazil, 2-hour presentations about oil price manipulation. I've been involved. I was part of Occupy Wall Street, gave a speech on the opening day of Occupy Wall Street. That's like in every Occupy Wall Street documentary. I mean, my achievements are massive, and, I'm not here to brag about them tonight, but I need to talk about them more. You need to tell people about them more, because when you build up my achievements, you're building up yourself. You're defending this community, because people would have you convinced again that, the kind of, the COINTELPRO stuff that they've done to me is ridiculous. What they would have people believe, and BreadTube has made YouTube videos and everything saying that the only reason I started CPI was as an elaborate scheme to get sexual favors out of people. That is so utterly ridiculous. And like the fact that anyone could believe that, these people, their minds are like, these people are like crazy sex freaks, I must say, because it's like, that's really elaborate. If I just wanted sexual favors out of people, there are ways to get sexual favors out of people other than start an anti-imperialist group, write books that are hundreds of pages in length, stream every night for 10 years, right? It's bizarre that anyone would even think that. It's a huge amount of projection, because it's like, but that's what they would have you believe. So we have to push back. We have to fight back. And even though my initial instinct is to be humble, we have to fight back. We have to get this book to as many people as we possibly can. We need to, you need to buy this book. Okay, you do. I'll just be honest. You need to buy this book. You need to show it to your friends and neighbors. And we need to defend our community and show people what we're about. But anyway, back to the point, right? There was a whole unnecessary sideways thing. But anyway, the BreadTube is gone. It's gone. So, ContraPoints became a heroin addict. And that's unfortunate, and again, ContraPoints, I felt like a lot of her material was, here's how I think about ContraPoints. All right. Some of her material was very insightful. I found her incel documentary to be very insightful into how the human mind works. I thought it was brilliant. And there's some things that she did that had value, but there's an element of, how do I put this? Superficiality to what she did. For example, ContraPoints is a Democrat, insists people vote for Democrats. Donald Trump is bombing Iran right now, blew up a girls' elementary school and in Iran right now. ContraPoints has this huge YouTube channel. Where is ContraPoints' video urging people to go out into the streets and protest the war against Iran? Right? Trump is doing it. She's got the perfect opportunity, right? She would never protest it if Biden did it. She would, she supports the war on Ukraine and killing people in Russia, but now Trump and Republicans are bombing Iran. So where's her YouTube video about that? Well, there isn't one. When a black socialist organization got raided by the FBI, the Uhuru movement, where's her YouTube video about the Uhuru movement and why they need to be supported against the FBI repression? Where is it? There isn't one. However, you will find two, not one, 2.5 hour long films that she has created about J.K. Rowling is transphobic. That's what's important to her. Right? Now, put your feelings about the trans thing aside. Let's imagine for a minute that we all agree that, the oppression of trans people is the most important thing. That's what she thinks is important, is that the Harry Potter lady doesn't agree with her about the trans thing. And she has made films that are 2.5 hours long about that. People are being blown up in Iran. Black organizations are being raided by the FBI. We're marching toward World War III against Russia. We're funding literal Nazis in Ukraine that are bombing, dormitories and blowing up kids, right? And she does films about the Harry Potter lady doesn't agree with her about the trans thing. It is so ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. When you have a huge platform like that, that's what you choose to talk about. So, as much as I sympathize with anybody who struggles with any form of addiction, it's like, how can these people call themselves socialists? And it's like, our government is murdering people all over the world, but most especially in the Donbass, most especially in Iran and in the Middle East right now. And it's like, and then she has another film that she made about the Twilight books and female sexuality. Really, you're supposed to be this big socialist with this huge platform. Your government is murdering people overseas, marching us toward World War III, jailing people for their dissent. And let's talk about Twilight and what it says about female sex fantasies. And it's like, there's a level of like, these people, what is wrong with them? It's like they don't care about anything that an actual socialist would care about. They care about below the belt. That's what they care about. They care about sex. That's really all they care about is sex. Homosexuality, transgenderism, pornography, sexual fantasies. That's all these. It is one of the most bizarre things. It's like, and maybe it's one of the side effects of being rich, right? If you're rich and you don't have to work for a living and you just sit around all day having sex. I don't know. That's what they say about, like monkeys in the zoo. They don't have anything to do, right? Because they bring them their food, right? Monkeys in the wild, they have to go out and find stuff to eat. And, but monkeys in the zoo, they can't go anyplace. They're sitting in the zoo. And so what do? Well, they fuck each other all day long. It's like these people, they're so rich. Maybe that's part of like what happens when you're rich, is rich people have nothing to do but have sex. And so they think about sex all day long. Because it's like, it's utterly bizarre. But so that's my beef with ContraPoints, is that she's not used her platform to do anything good. She's just used her platform to talk about sex. And like, I don't know. J.K. Rowling didn't even start out as really coming down hard on the trans thing. She tried to be nuanced and careful, and then the crazy internet went after her, and she, and that's a really sad thing again about social media, is that social media, there's nothing you can do. If you make a mistake and they start canceling you for it, there's nothing you can do. When Kanye said what he said about the Jews, has anyone, he's apologized. Has that changed anything? No. Right. And it's like, when they start going after you, all you can do is double down, because there's no, when they start coming at you and calling you racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever it is, there is literally nothing you can do. You can't show them that they're wrong. You can't apologize. All you can do is double down. And, it's ridiculous. And so J.K. Rowling said something very mild on the trans thing, and they went after her. And she kind of tried to apologize. Nope, can't apologize. And so now, yeah, now J.K. Rowling, part of her identity is, but it's a response to people on the internet being crazy about her. And again, so is that productive? Is, driving J.K. Rowling into making her whole identity, gang stalking is real on the internet. Is gang stalking J.K. Rowling a productive thing to use your platforms? You've got millions of subscribers. You're bringing in well over $100,000 a year on Patreon. And you've decided that what you're going to focus on is J.K. Rowling is an evil transphobe. It's like there's a value issue there. It's like, that just shows you how fake these people are. But regardless, the point is they're all done. They're all done. Vaush had the horsey thing, and no one's talking to Vaush anymore. And, Hbomberguy, didn't he shut down his YouTube channel? And, they're all over. The only one who's left is Hasan Piker. He's the only one who's left. He's the only one of these people who's still going. And he's sounding more like us every day. And he's awful. Democrat apologist, said he would vote for AOC before he would vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's fine with AOC supporting genocide. And even though Marjorie Taylor Greene is against Israel's crimes and against the war in Iran, he would never vote for her because she's a big fat racist. Hasan Piker is awful. But Hasan Piker has leaned into exactly what BreadTube's attack, their initial attack on me, was that I said that as an anti-imperialist, as a socialist, I stand with Russia, I stand with China, I stand with Iran, I stand with Cuba. Hasan Piker now talks about he loves China and he defends China loudly. Hasan Piker went to Cuba and is facing some, subpoena around that. So Hasan Piker is the only BreadTuber left. And he's trying every day to sound more and more like us. That right there tells you that we won, folks. We won. They're over. They're gone. They're shutting down their YouTube channels. They're gone. They're absolutely gone. They're absolutely gone. And we're still here. And we're still here. And in a way, it's interesting. So I'll just reflect for a moment. We're talking about one aspect of our community. CPI is such a big project. There's many aspects of this. One thing that is convenient, and it's just a reality. It's a reality, and it's interesting to me, okay, is that the BreadTube crowd isn't watching us any longer. And that's good. I mean, I like when people watch me. I like having views and likes. I like, YouTube revenue and all that. But they're not paying attention to us. And that's good. And I will see tweets occasionally like, oh, whatever happened to Caleb? I'm right here. You can find me. Type Caleb Maupin into YouTube. You can find my YouTube channel. But they don't know we exist. And that's good. That's for the best. Because until they decided we didn't exist, every time we did anything, we would have to deal with them mocking it online. Every rally that we had, they would video record. They would take the video and make fun of us. And they do this thing that you could do to anything. It's not an argument. They would show videos of CPI rallies and just stop and go and laugh, and that's not an argument. Right. I mean, you could do that with anything. I could do that with their videos. Right. And that was one of the main things BreadTube did, is that they wanted to go after somebody. They just showed video of them. They did this to me thousands of times. Just show video of the person, stop the video and go, and just laugh. That's not an argument. It's not an argument. That is not an argument at all. Right. You could literally do that to anybody. Right. And half the time, and if they said anything, they would comment, oh, look how weird his face looked. I mean, and you could show a video of any protest and stop and go, what nerds, they don't do that to us anymore, right? They could at some point, but I don't think they will, right? I don't think they will do it anymore. and it's good that we're not being targeted in that way any longer, right? We're not being targeted in that way any longer. And there's a reason for that, which is there are now some rodeo clowns out there, right? There are some rodeo clowns who have emerged. Now, what is a rodeo clown? Let's just talk about this, right? Rodeos are, for those who may not be familiar, that's like Wild West competition shows where, the guy, it's like various competitions associated with cowboys. Right, where the guy would ride the bucking bronco, or they have people that do the rope thing. It's, rodeos are like cowboy sporting competition kind of things. And at rodeos, there's a group of people, there's very skilled individuals who are called rodeo clowns, whose job it is to distract bulls so they don't hit people. And they're clowns. They dress like clowns. They are literally clowns, but they're not just silly, right? They're not just clowns. They're very skilled clowns in a way. They have a very important job. Maybe I shouldn't say they're very skilled. They have a very important job, which is to make sure people don't get hurt. They're entertainers and they attract attention for themselves and people laugh at them. But at the same time, they distract bulls because bulls can kill people, right? And so basically when they need to get the bulls out of the way and they need to maybe protect somebody who's injured, or maybe they send out the rodeo clowns who are funny and attract a lot of attention, but they also attract the attention of the bulls, and the bulls go the other way, right? And those are rodeo clowns, right? The asshole Communist Party are rodeo clowns, right? And that's what they are, right? And it's convenient for us, basically. This kind of fake, these people that are doing a very poorly executed version of what CPI was doing 5 years ago or 3 years ago. They have become the rodeo clowns, so that all the people that used to stalk us are stalking them, right? And I don't even want to say too much about them because they're just despicable human beings. But in a way, they've helped us because all the people that were like the BreadTube stalkers of CPI, they now stalk the rodeo clowns, right? And that's good for us because now we can just organize. We can just organize. And yeah, all these people that that are trying to maintain wokeism is real leftism and fighting. We're not even interested in fighting with people about what real communism is anymore. We're doing innovationism. We're building a whole new movement. We can organize our workshops, we can organize our events, and we don't have people taking videos of everything we do and going ho 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 about it because they're doing it to the asshole Communist Party. And let them, you know what I mean? They don't do any real organizing, right? They're just an internet fandom, kind of like BreadTube. And they distract the hate mobs. And I think that's a very helpful thing. And it's very convenient. And we've been using that to our advantage. Basically, I was being targeted by BreadTube. So the same entities that created BreadTube decided they needed to create people that sounded like us, that weren't building a real organization. They knew that as much as they demonized me, as much as they smeared me and canceled me, there was a layer of people that were attracted to what I had to say. And so they needed a place for those people to go. Right. And I think it's a honeypot. I think, well, I don't want to get into too much detail, but it's a honeypot, basically. So they created a honeypot. They blew up some social media influencers to attract the kind of people on the internet who would be looking for the kind of stuff we say and lead them in a bad direction, right? And make sure they don't do anything. That's the main thing, is to make sure they don't do any activism. That's fine. We're fine. That's fine. We just let them, because they have become the magnet for all the distracting, obnoxious hate that we used to get. And now we're able to actually function as an organization. we're actually able to carry out what we intended to do all along, which is when I started my YouTube channel, I said, out of the movement to the masses. That was the slogan that I used, out of the movement to the masses. What that meant was we need to organize the bulk of the American people, right? I said, I'm done begging for a place in communism and leftism. I want to get to the masses of people. And that's what I've said. And now we can do that. We can do that. And innovationism gives us the ability to not take with us the problems of whatever the train wreck that calls itself communism in America is. It gives us the ability to build the movement we've always wanted to build. Our beliefs haven't changed, but our beliefs are now no longer associated with some other beliefs that we don't have and with some communities and identities that we don't associate with. And we can just build the innovationist movement. And that's a real great opportunity. And that the asshole Communist Party, they basically, they're begging for a place in communism. And we have no interest in doing that. We don't care what communists think of us, right? And that has been our position. I mean, that's really been the position from the beginning. But now we can really embrace it. We are not trying to win an argument over who the real communists are. We're not trying to prove that we're the true inheritors of Karl Marx. We have certain beliefs that we hold on to. We have other things we've left behind, like dialectical materialism, right? Like atheism, like like this celebration of conflict and the permanent revolution and all of that. And we are building a very exciting, optimistic movement. And they are begging for a place in communism, right? And it's kind of sad because my whole experience is that, you can't, basically. Communism in America is run by a cartel, a criminal cartel. You can't. Now, I will say there is some suspicious stuff. Which is that, we never, I will just throw this out there. I have been doing communist stuff. I had been doing communist stuff my whole adult life. I know how these groups work. And I never had any desire. I knew you can't take over a party. You just can't, right? These parties are people's property. There are people at the top of these groups who it is their livelihood, and especially the Communist Party USA. It's a stock portfolio. It's a real estate, it's a building in Manhattan. It's a building in Chicago. You're not going to take over the Communist Party. And no, it doesn't matter if you have the majority of the votes and you play Model UN. It doesn't matter. People have been trying to take over the Communist Party for years. Not going to happen. I never had any intention of taking over the Communist Party. None, right? That was never even something I even considered. However, the Communist Party USA, which has been run by the FBI since 1956 at least, has published a smear piece against CPI, right? On their website. You can still to this day find a piece trying to present me as a white supremacist on the Communist Party's website. They took the BreadTube line on us. They have never published anything against the asshole Communist Party, which literally did try to take them over and now is trying to steal their name. It's basically organizing with the same name as them. So what's going on there? There's obviously one group that is trying to take their brand, and they've never attacked them. But they have attacked me. And I never wanted to take their brand. And I urged at the time the people that formed the asshole Communist Party, at the time they were talking to us and pretending to be friendly to us, I told them, just don't. You're not going to take over the CPUSA. So why in the world has the CPUSA attacked me, but never attacked the people who tried to take their name? Think about that. Isn't that interesting? And you don't have to think about it too hard. And it's really not worth losing much sleep over because it's not that important. It's really not that important. But it tells you that It tells you that there are forces that have been out to get us and our community from the beginning, and there are rodeo clowns. And you know, BreadTube were rodeo clowns in a way. It was the masses were angry, and Bernie Sanders and Trump, and they were there to distract the masses and take them in one place. And then we came along, and then another set of rodeo clowns came along. But we proceed. We are still here. We're still intact despite everything. We're still here. You know, I'm on every channel. I was on Academic Agent on Tuesday. I was on Kim Iverson on Friday. I'm going on a couple other big channels in the next few days. And I mean, it just keeps, we're still here. And we're having our events in July, right? I'm going around the country in July, and we're having our national training school in August. And we're doing it, and we're still here, and we're still surviving. And we're not part of the silly internet banter that goes back and forth, which is not productive. We're building a real organization. We have real people in our organization who do real stuff. And it's very important. We're still here. We brought down BreadTube. We forced the conversation. And now everybody knows that BreadTube is deep state. And the only person in BreadTube that is still relevant is the one who is starting to mimic the way we talk, Hasan Piker. All the rest of them are done. ContraPoints hasn't made a film in a couple years. You know, Vaush, you know, horses, and Thought Slime, is he even doing anything anymore? Has he made a video in like years? They've all just faded into nothing because their hearts weren't really in it. They don't really care. They don't really care. These were rich kids who got a gig. They were rich kids who got a gig, and the gig is over. The gig is over, right? Hasan Piker still has a gig, but part of his gig is sounding like us, and that's a whole nother thing. And, you know, there's still some rodeo clowns out there, and there will be more rodeo clowns. But BreadTube has gone away. And this is what you need to understand, okay? And this is not an easy thing to understand, but you have to think long term. The frauds and the phonies and the rodeo clowns and the paid actors, they do their job for a while and then they go away. And I was doing this when I was 15 years old. And I was doing this when I was 20. And I was doing this when I was 25. And I was doing this when I was 30. And I was doing this when I'm 35. And I'm 38 years old and I'm still doing this. I'm still here. I am still here and I am not going away. And I'm in this for real. And I've been there when it really matters. And I take this stuff seriously. And I value my community. And I treat people with respect. And I am committed to building our movement and building our organization. And I'm still here and I'm not on autopilot. And that's the other thing. I'm not on autopilot. I had a great conversation. There was somebody I talked to who was reacting to my video about Tulsi Gabbard. And they gave me a very interesting critique of the Tulsi Gabbard campaign, which I'm not going to go into great detail about on here. But, you know, one of the things that happens with these organizations is that they lose the ability to try new things. They get in a rut, and the rut is imposed by the state, right? The LaRouche movement is a great example. I've learned a lot from the LaRouche movement. As much as there's disagreements there, etc., you know, Lyndon LaRouche was somebody who was a communist, who was anti-Malthusian. And, you know, the LaRouche movement, in LaRouche's life, they were very resilient because they were able to constantly come up with new ideas. Lyndon LaRouche himself was smart enough, and they were constantly coming up with new ideas. But, you know, shortly before he died, they got into kind of a rut. And that in some of the negative interactions that we had with them towards the end of when we stopped cooperating with each other, that's what came across to me. And they came by it honestly. Their national leaders were all thrown in jail. They had their records destroyed. They were really badly treated. The federal government viciously went after them. And they came out of that experience, basically scared. Scared. And some of our interactions, it became clear to me that, that organization, they say a lot of great stuff about Russia and China. But part of the reason that they couldn't maintain a relationship with CPI was they were really scared of, flying above the radar, getting in trouble again, right? That they had been attacked by the state. And a lot of the communist groups were the same way. They went so far, and then they got threatened, and then they remained intact, but they remained intact with this real fear of rocking the boat, real fear of going too far, right? And I mean, my experience in Workers' World was like that. Workers' World didn't want to grow. And it didn't want to grow for a number of reasons. I think the one of the reasons was that it was just such an old group. It had been such a group of people's, it had been certain people's, friend circle for so long. I mean, every time someone new came around, it was like annoying because that person was not part of their thing. But then on top of that, there was an element of, there was a fear of growing too much, because if they grew too much, then new leaders would have to emerge and certain people wouldn't get the spotlight. That was another one of their problems. But deeper than that, I think there was a real fear that if they grew and rocked the boat too much, the government would come down on them. And that these groups, they get into a rut where there's certain things they know how to do, and they do them, and they just keep doing them. And maybe when they started, what they did, this one trick, they're all like a one-trick pony. Maybe when they started, that one trick really paid out. But then they did it again, and 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 they just, became less and less relevant. And a lot of the illiberal organizations are like that. They're one-trick ponies, and the first time they did their trick, it made a really big splash. And then they got set up so they can never learn any new tricks, and they're one-trick ponies. This is cowboy night, right? I'm talking about rodeos and now one-trick ponies, but and that's what a lot of these groups, they learn to do certain things well, and they keep doing those things, and they won't try new things. We're constantly trying new things in CPI. We're experimenting with doing something in the lead up to our convention. You're going to hear an announcement very shortly of one of the things we'll be doing in Chicago before our convention in August. It's not like anything we've ever done before. It's a completely, it's similar, I guess you could say, to things that we've done, but we're doing it in a different way. And we're trying something completely new. And we're doing a lot of new things because we want to build a community of people that is committed to anti-imperialism. We're committed to the struggle. So I don't know. I just wanted to talk tonight and reflect on why this YouTube channel blew up. I've had this YouTube channel since 2008, believe it or not, right? Since the year Obama was running for president. On my college campus as a 22-year-old, I debated another guy. And the first videos on this YouTube channel are me debating a guy on my college campus. And I wanted to upload it, and that's when this channel opened in 2008. We've been going ever since then, but it really blew up in 2020 during the pandemic. Well, now it's 2026, right? And here we are, and we just keep going. I don't back down. I never surrender, and we have got a job to do, and we are committed to that job, and we've stayed committed to this job year after year. We have stayed committed to this job. And we're getting it done. So I wanted to highlight how BreadTube has gone and all of that. And the second half of the show is me answering y'all's questions. I've got 2 Buy Me a Coffees that have come in. One is anonymous from someone. One is from Richard Unanimous. And we've had 1 super chat that comes in. But we need 9 more super chats to come in so then I can play the China song. So I can't play the China song yet. So I need you all to send more super chats. You can also do buy me a coffee and all of that. But why don't we do the roll call? Names and locations, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? And then I'll start answering questions. And if we get to the 9 or the 10, I'll play the China song. Portland, Jake Howarth. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Chase in Nebraska. Good to see you, Chase. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Hell yeah. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Ryan in Kansas City. Jacob in Wisconsin. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us? Brian in Ohio. Good to see you, Brian. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. Arlene in Milwaukee. Good to see you, Arlene. Arlene. Alex in Brazil. Good to see you. Jenny in Cincinnati. Swine Class in Baltimore. Good to see you, brother. Thanks for watching. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? We got names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations, names and locations. The Ozarks, JDL is with us. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations, names and locations. Anybody else? All right. Malcolm in Glasstoke, UK. Good to see you. Good to see you, Malcolm. All right. Now, all right. So, as I said, so we got one super chat that's come in. If we can get 9 more super chats, I will play the China song. If not, I'll keep that for the next stream. Patch in Arizona, number 6 from Hawaii. All right. Samuel from the Far East. Good to see you. I will play that. One thing I did, I've been showing my RT reporting on here. That's one thing that always annoyed me about the BreadTube people. I do not understand it. Oh, Briggy Smalls. They're very good, Briggy. One thing about the BreadTube people that was beyond me, right? Could you post the link to buy me a coffee? Of course. One thing that was that I just couldn't understand about the BreadTube people was they continued to say I was quote unquote fired from RT. I don't know where they got this from. I have been on RT consistently since 2011, right? I was a guest, and in 2016 I became an employee. At one point I was freelancing. If you've been watching RT, you've been seeing me on RT nonstop since 2011. Okay. And when RT America closed down, they all were like, oh, Caleb's unemployed now. I wasn't, I continued working for RT International. And then there were rumors that I lost my job over this or that. I have continuously been working for RT, but they have done podcasts about me where they say, well, now that he's lost his job at RT, now that he's no longer on RT, I see people tweeting, Caleb is no longer. Watch RT. I'm on RT every day. Where do people get this from? And it shows that, like, on some level, these people, their only connection to reality is their internet bubble, right? And that's these people are like, I wonder what happened to Caleb. Come and check it out, right? Come to our YouTube channel. We're right here, right? It's like, and it's like these people, they are so in a bubble, right? If ContraPoints is not tweeting against us, if Vaush isn't insulting us, we don't exist. And that's good. And now, they're going after the rodeo clowns. Let them, right? And that they bought that for themselves. They decided they were going to own communism. And we said, okay, take it. Good luck. We're still here. We're still doing our thing. We're all still here. And these people don't know about us, and that's fine. But, so I did want, while we're waiting, and yeah, this is the buy me a coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. pretty straightforward. You can send the question there. But they had me on RT today. I reported on the Lebanon, the Lebanon negotiations, right? The Lebanese government and Israel are negotiating in Washington, D.C. So I gave this update. I'll show that. Then we'll start answering questions.
We took a strong action for a different reason, so they were reciprocating it.
Can you explain?
I hear the negotiation itself has gone very well, actually. Very well. It's a different part of the world. I'd say in that part of the world, ceasefires when you're shooting in a more moderate manner.
And for more, let's discuss this now with RT correspondent Caleb Maupin. Caleb, what do we know about the latest developments in the Middle East? It looks like Washington's position on the peace process has changed.
Well, as of now, the ceasefire with Tehran appears to be holding, but the contradictions begin regarding Lebanon. Now, the second day of talks in Washington, D.C. between Lebanese officials and Israeli officials have gone on, and they are taking place despite Israel unleashing a barrage against southern Lebanon. And even today, there was a drone strike by the Israeli military that was carried out. Now, Donald Trump claims he spoke with Hezbollah and that they have agreed not to shoot. Here's what he said.
We actually spoke with Hezbollah for the first time ever. We didn't know they spoke. And they agreed yesterday they're not going to shoot. Israel's not going to shoot. We're just going to see. But I'd like to separate it. I'd like to have it a separate thing because it is separate.
Now, Donald Trump there separates negotiations with Tehran and Israel's negotiations with Lebanon. That's very different than what we've heard from Iranian officials. They say if there is no deal with Lebanon, there is no deal with them. The two things are intertwined, and that's non-negotiable. Now, we also heard at this point the foreign minister of Iran say that they will not remain silent in response to the attacks on Beirut.
Any attack on Beirut will have grave consequences and lead to a full resumption of war. At the moment when Israel threatened to attack the suburbs of Beirut, we adopted a decisive stance, and the Iranian armed forces were put on full alert for a counterattack.
Now, Trump says that he has secured commitments from Hezbollah and from Israel to end the fighting, and that this is a diplomatic breakthrough preventing a wider war. But Israel doesn't seem to agree about that. The Israeli Army Chief of Staff said there is no ceasefire, despite Trump's efforts to shore up the nominal truce that came into effect in mid-April. Now, this fourth round of talks that's taking place now in Washington, D.C. between Israeli officials and Lebanese government officials. It is proceeding as we see Israel continuing this attack. Israel acknowledges no ceasefire. Furthermore, Hezbollah, which is supported by Iran, opposes the negotiations taking place at all.
In Lebanon, we take the initiative, operate, and strike every threat. The Israeli Navy is an active partner in the operation. There is no ceasefire for our troops. We are working to maximize the operational freedom granted to us and will seize every opportunity to remove threats to Israeli civilians and our troops.
Now, fighting is continuing at this point in southern Lebanon, and it proceeds despite hundreds of thousands of people and entire towns being left in ruins, people being displaced, and Trump seems to be pushing for truce in Lebanon, but he faces a major obstacle, which is that Israel clearly just doesn't seem interested in any ceasing of hostilities.
All right, RT correspondent Caleb Maupin, thank you for keeping us in the loop.
Yeah, that's me. All right, so we're at 2 super chats. So much appreciated. And I will do super chats after I do buy me a coffees. But as I said, if we can get 10 super chats tonight, I will then play the China song. But the best way to send questions is still going to buymeacoffee.com. I'm going to start answering coffees. And then I'll start answering super chats. If there's any Rumble rants, I'll answer those. And we may just have to try this again another night. We may not, but that's how these things go. It is a little late, and I'm going on another big show tomorrow. Not saying which one it is, but I'm going on. That's another big show tomorrow, and Sunday I'm going on another big show. And I've been doing a lot lately, so we gotta get this out there. But anyhow, so let's start doing questions, the coffee questions. The first one, this is an anonymous question. They said, you read about Michael Hudson, what Michael Hudson wrote about the Jews. I haven't actually read what Michael Hudson wrote about the Jews. I don't know what Michael Hudson. I know Michael Hudson wrote a book on the history of debt. And I know Michael Hudson does talk about overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And he's a Marxist economist who actually understands Marxist economics to some degree or other. He has a little bit of a different approach, but he's closer to where we're at. But I actually have not. I just don't know his work. He argues texts in the Torah in the original languages could be argued as being anti-debt. I found it interesting. Well, yeah, it's in the Old Testament. It says you cannot lend money at interest, right? You go read the Old Testament. Yeah, I always say on these streams, every major religion, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, forbids lending money at interest. And that includes Judaism. It is in the Old Testament. It says you should not lend money at interest. It also says it in the New Testament, but that opposing usury was part of the Jewish tradition as well. The only reason we associate Jews with usury was because when in medieval Europe, you needed a group of people to lend money, and the Catholic Church forbid lending money at interest. So they created an exception where Jews were allowed to do it, but it has nothing to do with, that's what it was about, right? Is that the Catholic Church kind of made an exception for Jewish people in Europe. And that in feudalism, there's a very good book you can read, and it's by Leon Abrams, who died in the Holocaust, and he wrote this book called The Jewish Question, a Marxist view. And in it, he goes over the history of Jewish people in Europe, and basically, one of the things that he debunks is the Nazis believed there was a biological Jew. There is no such thing, because all over Europe, there were various places where Jews existed, and they didn't, need to have Jews as a separate group to engage in money lending or whatever. So they immediately converted. And probably every white European person has some Jewish heritage, because all over Europe, in Spain and in France and in Germany and in England and in Scotland and in Wales, there were groups of Jewish people. Who, they decided that in feudal society, they didn't need them as a separate caste. And so they all just assimilated, right? And so that's one of the biggest flaws. The Nazis had it in their head that there was something special and biological about Jews, and there is no such thing. There is no such thing. And that's very interesting. Now, just to address this, the Talmud says you can lend money. And the Talmud, this is very interesting. The Talmud, first of all, a lot of Hasidic Jews don't recognize the Talmud, right? Neturei Karta does not recognize the Talmud. And many Hasidic Jews say the Talmud is not our religion. They only follow the Torah. The Talmud was written, when was the Talmud written? It was written significantly after the death of Christ. And it was written at a time that Judaism was kind of Christianity was blowing up as a religion, and Jews were trying to define themselves in opposition to Christianity. And that the Talmud is very, very important to most religious Jews, but not all. And actually, the more Hasidic and Orthodox Jews don't recognize it. And yeah, the other thing about the Talmud, and this is, this is a point, I've referenced the Talmud in some recent interviews and stuff, but I want to be fair. The Talmud contradicts itself. The Talmud was written by many different rabbis, and there are many different articles and polemics in the Talmud that say contradictory things. For example, in the Talmud, there are many different interpretations of the life of Jesus. They're all not favorable, right? None of them say he was the Messiah, but there are some that say Jesus was a black magician. There are some that say Jesus was somebody who was a student, a student of the Pharisees who then used the teachings for self-gain. There are some that say Jesus was born in Egypt. There are some that say Jesus, was born to Mary, and there was a Roman centurion was his father. And there are like 4 or 5 different versions of the life of Jesus in the Talmud. None of them are favorable, but you can't say, well, the Talmud says this. And it's like, it might say that, but in another place, it might say something else, right? And that's important. I mean, that's true to some degree or other about the Bible, but, the Talmud is a compilation of polemical essays by different rabbis and various oral traditions of rabbis at the time. And it was a collection of texts that were put together to define Judaism in opposition to Christianity. And so it's a very, very different context. The Torah, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, that is what, what Abrahamic faiths are all in theory supposed to be based on, I guess. Right. Jesus, basically, Jesus is quoted as saying, I come to fulfill the law, right? Not to overturn it, but to fulfill it. And that, when Jesus says the Sabbath is made for man, man is not made for the Sabbath. When Jesus says, that, they ask him which of the 10 commandments is the most important. He says the greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. He's basically saying we don't need that anymore. Jesus is saying we don't need the letter of the law of the Torah any longer. We need to connect with God, right? And he's saying, and that's a big deal, right? And that's why, one thing that new atheists will do is they will pull things from the Old Testament and say, oh, you eat shellfish. Well, the Sabbath was made for man, not. But that said, one thing that evangelicals will do is they will frequently cite Old Testament stuff to make their point. And it's like, well, if Jesus repudiated the New Testament, if Jesus repudiated the Old Testament, then, so, if the verse that says you can't be gay is right next to the verse that says you can't eat shellfish, then you can't eat shellfish and you can't be gay, or neither count, and that's, there's inconsistency there, but there you go. But anyway, and that's part of the problem is that you have a lot of people that are inconsistent about that. But yeah, the Torah, the way Judaism was explained to me by one of my Orthodox Jewish coworkers, and I think this is the way he explained it to me. And he actually sent me a text, an audio recording of a Hasidic rabbi explaining it. Is their belief is that at the beginning of time, God went to every people and every nation and offered the Torah, and only the Jews accepted the Torah. Right. And that the Jewish people are they are the nation that follows the Torah. Abraham was presented the Torah, right. And Moses and Abraham, it was basically this way of being that God presented to all the different tribes and nations of the world. And only one of them ever accepted it. And that's the Jews. Right. That is what Hasidic Jews believe. Now, there's various other schools. There are various other forms of Orthodox Judaism. There are conservative Jews. There are Reformed Jews who believe all kinds of different stuff, and they fight about it. And the various sects, especially of Orthodox and Hasidic Judaism, there's like a million different sects that fight with each other. So, and I'm giving a huge oversimplification, but basically, what Hasidic Jews believe is that every people, every nation was offered the Torah. They accepted it. And because they accepted it, they have a special role in history to take on, I guess. And then what that role is, etc., there's various debates, etc. So, okay. All right. So there we go. All right. So, all right, next question is from Richard Unanimous. He said, I don't understand how Putin can have such a good relationship with Israel. Okay, all right, here we go. I believe the Soviet struggle against fascism was truly noble. The struggle to liberate Europe from the Nazis is something Putin still considers as really special, as was the Soviet struggle with of allies in Cuba, Angola, and Namibia to end the scourge of apartheid and the Palestinians, the last remainder of the Soviet bloc of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, has been the fight, right? Also contributed to help, right? Yeah. You know who is in Russia right now? Like, as we speak at this very moment, you know who is like one of the guests of honor at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum? Candace Owens. You know what American TV host has had a sit-down interview with Russian President Putin? Tucker Carlson. I mean, Russia has diplomatic relations with Israel. And at one point, maybe a decade ago, Russia and Israel seemed a little bit closer. But and at this point, I mean, whenever Russia's at the UN, they're criticizing Israel. You know, and Israel is, you know, is all out at war with Iran, and Iran and Russia are very, very close and have a very close economic relationship. You know, Russia has tried to mediate and play the role of, you know, they offered to enrich Iran's uranium for Iran, but like, you know, yes, there were times like maybe a decade ago or so often where they were kind of, you know, there was like, you know, situations where Putin seemed to be supporting some of Israel's military activities, etc., but that's not the case anymore. And Israel knows it. The Israelis know it, and they consider Russia to be their opponent. Laura Loomer has turned into Hillary Clinton with Russiagate right now. So that's just, you know, I mean, you know, there's a lot in our spaces and of people that play these games of like, why does Russia not do this? Why does China not do this? And a lot of that stuff, again, I don't know exactly where it comes from, but a lot of that stuff, I am convinced, is trying to, I don't know, be manipulative. You know, is trying to sow discord. You know, for example, like Russia has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And, you know, so Russia is not going to say it's okay for North Korea to leave the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Russia's not going to advocate for Iran to get a nuclear bomb because they signed the treaty. And if the treaty goes away, America then gives all of its allies nukes. And so then Russia has to give all of their allies nukes. And then, you know, and so, you know, there's certain things that as a major country, and yeah, there's a lot of Russians in Israel, a lot of Russian speaking Jews in Israel who do go back and forth and do business. And, you know, what is Russia supposed to do? Ban all those people from being in the country? They're not going to do that, right? That as a country, they have to be a country. And that, you know, and that there's a lot of this like, why doesn't Russia do this? Why doesn't Russia do that? Well, you know, I don't know, you know. Now, as far as Chase, again, you all are asking questions that, you know, you need to think about this. Like Chase just sent me this question. Chase, I don't know what your intent here is by asking me. What do you think about the culture of RT America? What the hell? What, you want me to talk shit about all my coworkers? Oh, well, this person was like this and this person. Like, come on, man. Seriously, on a public forum, you want me to just get on here and tell you what I thought of every single one of my coworkers and everything that went on? Is that professional behavior? You want me to do that? You think that I'm going to do that? I'm not going to do that, Chase. I mean, come on, man. Come on. Think about this right now. Would you, if you had worked at a company and you still interacted with a lot of those people at the company, would you just get on a live stream and start talking about every personal thing? And you know, it was a great place to work, and I'm really sad that it went under. And you know, it was great, and there was a great crew of folks there. But like, you know, like you want me to like go into detail about every little bit of office politics, and I'm not going to do that, right? And you named various people here. I encountered, I should say, at least all of those people at various times. And, you know, they all had their strengths and they all did good things. And, yeah, being able, when we had the office and the studio, to be there, to talk to the guests who came in, that was really a privilege. And it's too bad that the studio closed down. You know, I still am able to work for them from New York. And, you know, I mean, there's no RT America anymore, but I'm able to do my RT work from New York and stuff. But it is It is a shame that they closed down as they did. And, you know, I was never really part of RT America. Okay, you were praising them, but you got to, like, come on, man. Like, you know, I was never really a part of RT America. I worked for RT America, but I've always been RT International. You know, I've always been RT International, but, you know, I was in the office with those people. I worked with them. You know, you know, and I'm glad you're praising them, but it's like, you know, what is it? Gave a feeling you couldn't get anywhere else. It was intellectually stimulating. Yeah, absolutely. No, the content that we did was utterly amazing. A very unique place where you could find right-wing populists like Scotty now Hughes, left-wing one like Lee Camp, and you could sit down and have a civilized discussion. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. But yeah, I don't know what more to say about it. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, it was great, you know. Yes, yeah. I read the rest of your, you know, read the rest of it. But anyway, okay, so we got 2 super chats that have come in, and Hempcar said the Talmud says, okay, come on, Hempcar. Okay, I just talked about why, you know, every bad thing the Talmud says, you know, the stuff that's negative on Christianity is in it. I just talked about that for a long time. I'm not going to show a video. Oh, it's not a video, it's a link. Okay, he linked some negative things about Jesus in the Talmud. Very good. And then Hempcar said, what do you know about Albert Camus? He's one of the French existentialists, right? And he did write positive things about Cuba. A lot of those French existentialists had to kind of have one foot in Marxism. You know, they were against the mainstream, like the official communist parties, but, you know, like Albert Camus wrote a book about Cuba I used to have a copy of, and, you know, John Paul Sartre called himself a Maoist for a little while, and that they kind of, because it was France and because the radical scene was such a big deal, those like existentialists that were part of the, you know, the CIA, postmodern Marxist kind of thing, they had to have one foot in like actual Marxism, you know, so yeah. I work with pets, no lie. It's hard to... What is it hard to do with the pets, Gabby? You lost me there. Anyway, but yeah. Albert Camus is a French existentialist, intellectual. I think he wrote Nausea, and he's just one of these people. But anyway, so now, spelling error. Okay. Now I'm going to do the 2 super chats that have come in. Funky said, how does capitalism and so-called male loneliness epidemic intersect? Why is feminism now being blamed for it? I think, I mean, a big part of it, it's actually related to swine class question, is that a lot of the jobs that men did don't exist anymore, right? And that, you know, we've moved toward an economy where you're kind of expected to have a college degree, and women do better in college than men do. And a lot of the ways that men have been socialized to act don't get you very far anymore. You know, and on top of that, a lot of the jobs that we associate as being like masculine jobs don't exist anymore. And on top of that, I mean, there's, you know, men are bookish, men are, you know, I don't know. I mean, there's certain aspects of the male character that just don't fly anymore. You know, and in a lot of ways, women are better than men. I will say, you know, women know how to work. Women always have better social skills than men. I mean, it's a huge exaggeration, but you know, it's true. Men don't have as good social skills as women. Men are way more competitive than women are. You know, men are not as effective at, you know, a lot of academia. Let me just put this out there. A lot of academia is pleasing the teacher. That's what academia is. It's largely, if you want to get A's in college, please the professor. You know, and women are better than men are. Men are, you know, more competitive, more selfish, more hard-headed. And, you know, it's not that men can't please the professor. Plenty of men get A's in college. But if you want to get A's in college, that's based on how well you give the professor what they want. Women are way better at giving the professor what they want than men are. No, not that no men are good at it, but women overall across the board are better at that. In a lot of ways, women are better than men in terms of organizing, you know, in terms of, you know, a lot of things that we associate with autism are male. You and that's just a fact. And women are more social than men are, and so there's that. I think a lot of it has to do with technology. A lot of it as well, is that technology gives people the way to a means of isolating themselves that didn't used to exist. It used to be you couldn't isolate yourself and get stimulation, that people had to connect with other people just to do things. That's not the case. One thing, for example, and one thing that's changed, my experience is communist groups, right? Every year when I was in the communist group I was in, they would have their national convention, and there would be about 300 people there. And I would think, where are these 300 people the other 365 days of the year? But they were people who were not active in the group. They were just interested in hearing communist rhetoric. They subscribed to the newspaper, and they came to the convention, the national conference we did once a year. Well, all those people, I can guarantee you, are not there anymore. First of all, the group hasn't had a national conference, but that's a whole nother story. But those people are not there. Why? They can watch it on the internet now. Those people were all there. They were not activists in the group, but they wanted the intellectual stimulation of hearing the argument. Now they can do that from their home, right? They can listen to podcasts. They can watch videos. They don't need to go to the convention to hear communist rhetoric. And it used to be that communist rhetoric in America was so rare, and all of that, yeah, there was, the group, in terms of membership, of active members, the group didn't have 300 members, but when they had their national convention, there'd usually be about 300 people there. Yeah, they would get that. And a lot of them were people who just came to watch, who, maybe they subscribed to the newspaper, they looked at the website, listened to the videos on the website, and then they came to watch the convention. They don't need to do that anymore, right? That you can get the stimulation of a lot of things without actually connecting with people. And that computers give people the ability to isolate. You can get intellectual stimulation. You can learn about things. You can engage and debate without actually being in a room with people. And there's obviously a sexual aspect to it too. Let's not pretend otherwise. So I think that has a lot to do with it. The top job of U.S. men without a college degree is driving freight. The future will involve self-driving cars. So what will become of these men? Well, I mean, this is what Marx wrote about, right? That the means of production are constantly revolutionizing themselves. The role of human labor power in production is constantly going down, and that ultimately that should be a good thing because there's less work that needs to be done. But in our irrational economic system, there's going to be unemployment, and the amount of wages paid out is going to decrease, and the ability of workers to buy back what they produce is going to decrease, and the amount of profit made from all those items, you can't extract profit. You can extract profit from a freight driver. You can't extract profit from a self-driving car, and you're going to have the same economic problems. We need a centrally planned economy. And that, when I went on with Academic Agent the other day, one of the questions he hit me with, he said, what are all these people going to do? What are they going to do? Say we had some kind of socialist society where, being unemployed, didn't mean you didn't get the fruits of society, right? That, there was enough wealth or whatever being generated by a high-tech economy that all these people didn't have to work. What would they do? And I said they would do things that were fulfilling, right? They would make art. They would watch movies. They would engage in scientific research. They would do things that were fulfilling. Labor would become life's prime want, not a necessity. They would do things that they want to do, not things that they have to do. Right? And people are very good at wasting time. Right? I mean, do you think people are not capable of wasting time? They're very, very capable of it. And I'm sure there will be plenty of people wasting time, but people will find work. People will work as a way of gaining fulfillment, right? Those who do choose to not just waste time will do things that they find fulfilling, not that is alienating. That's the whole point about alienation, is that, in capitalism, you rent yourself out to a boss to get enough to survive. Well, in a society where you're not obligated to do that, people will still choose to do things, but because it gives them something other than a wage, because they don't need to work, but labor becomes life's prime want. And that's the beauty of it. People will learn to play musical instruments. People will make films. People will engage in scientific research. People will, people will learn. People will, people will garden, right? People will find things to do, I'm sure. But what they find to do won't be. Anyhow, Chase says, what did you think of Peter Joseph's Zeitgeist series? I watched it and made interesting points. So I watched the first one when it came out. It was really big at my college. Everyone watched it. And I watched then the second one, Addendum. And honestly, looking back on it now, I feel like I was too hard on it. At that time in college, I felt like I got really angry about the way they dismissed communism as, oh, in communism, everyone has money. And, but looking back on it now, I honestly think that, the Zeitgeist series was good and it was important, because it was anti-establishment. If I remember the first Zeitgeist movie, the first film that it was like, the first one was about 9/11 truth. The second, it was like 3 parts. The first was about 9/11 truth. The second was about the Bible and astrology, astronomy, astrological symbolism in the Bible. And the third part was about the Federal Reserve System and how it's a ripoff. And then the sequel that they made was interviews with the guy who wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and emphasizing Peter Joseph and his vision of kind of using technology to create abundance. That was actually much more on point than I realized at the time. The point about abundance and all that, I didn't fully understand about the tendency of the falling rate of profit, etc. And the other thing I didn't understand, and I didn't understand was that communist groups in America are weak and played out, and they're not offering the future. So you can't just try to repackage what they're doing and do it better, right? And so my reaction was, this isn't communism. That was kind of my reaction. And honestly, it spoke to people in a way that something that called itself communism or presented itself as communism would not have spoken to people. And so I appreciate it. And that it was pointing to things like what we're talking about tonight, about, labor replacing technology. And then their vision of what they call a resource-based economy is the higher stage of communism. It's vast abundance. And it was understanding that we shouldn't treat technology as bad. We should use technology to create an abundant world. I guess what was missing was there was like no understanding that it was just like this understanding that the technology would just keep developing. And because of that, we would just have the higher stage of communism. Well, there's a problem. There's a big barrier, which is power and the state, right? And that, it's not simply a question of technology developing. It's about changing the way the economy operates. And that they kind of avoided the question of how the economy is organized and the kind of state you need. And that was the big hole in the film. I would also recommend, if you can find it, I don't know if you can find it, Shaun, Shaun Stone, the son of Oliver Stone, made a film that was very similar. That was very good. That was on RT America. It was about 2 hours long. It was similar and had a similar message, and it was very good. I would recommend watching that. But okay. All right. So I don't think we're going to hear the China song tonight. But yeah, I mean, there's a question of power there. I guess that's my main critique of them, is that there is still, the economics was very good, but there is still a question of power, right? And it's the idea that, well, technology will just keep advancing. Well, no, at some point you have to centralize the means of production. At some point, the economy has to be not functioning on the basis of private owners, or you're still going to have all the problems, right? And that was kind of what was missing from Peter Joseph, the analysis. It was just kind of this, well, technology will just keep advancing. all of that's true. Technology will keep advancing. And if technology is available to all, we could build a society of vast abundance, but there's a power struggle that goes on. I mean, imperialism, the imperialist monopolies, are not just going to give up their power. This is actually really similar to one of the arguments that neo-Confederates will make, is they'll say, well, slavery was just going to go away anyway. I mean, this is a really common argument. They say, well, we didn't have to have the Civil War because slavery was just going to go away anyway. No, it wouldn't have. Yes, if everyone was rational, right? Technology and all that was making slavery inefficient. But all of those slaves represented millions of dollars of wealth. Do you think all the slave owners were going to just go, the way we run our economy is not efficient anymore, so we're just going to give up millions of dollars? No, right? They were going to hold on to it until the end because, and that's the thing. Yes, if people were all rational, technology would just improve, and we would say, you know what? We ought to just have a mode of production where humanity as a whole enjoys the fruits of vast abundance that's created. Yeah, but there's going to be people who say, I'm at the top and I'm not just going to give up my position being on top of the world, and that's the issue, right? And it's like, if everyone had been rational in the 1860s, the slave owners would have just said, you know what? Slavery is not efficient anymore. Let's get rid of it. They were never going to do that because that'd be giving up their power. And yes, if the imperialists were very rational, they'd say, you know what? We should have a multipolar world. And we should, just have the wealth that's capable of being created by our high-tech economy be available to everybody. They would say that, but they would be giving up their power. So there you go. You think people can sue Big Pharma over COVID vax? They passed laws to make sure that couldn't happen, Gabby. That was actually one of the big things. They created a huge special laws to make sure no one could ever do that, which is one of the reasons that it's like, why would you do that if everything is fine, right? They created special immunity laws, so you can't sue them, so information is not available. That's one of the craziest things where people get, the conspiracy crowd pointed out. They're like, why are they passing laws that these people can never be held accountable for injuries? That, why were they giving them crazy liability shields? Why did Joe Biden pardon Dr. Fauci? They knew they were screwing us, and they knew that, and the bioweapons. Yeah. And that's gain of function research. The fact that we have labs, there are US government labs all over the world that are working to try and figure out how to make germs more and more, awful. Someone just bought 4 coffees and said, I'm an hour behind, but yeah, Caleb, you are amazing. Keep it up. P.S. That almost guy was insufferable. I don't know who's almost guy. What is he referencing? Who's he referencing? The almost guy? Who is that? Almost guy. What is almost guy? Is that a reference to one of the BreadTubers I was talking about? I don't know, folks. I don't know. Who is almost guy? What is that? But I appreciate that. I honestly, the first half of this, I don't know if this was the best way to do a stream, but the point is that we're still here and we're still rising as CPI, and we keep marching ahead. And thank you. Right. Thank you. He was asking about RT. Huh? What? Destiny? What? I'm lost. What's going on here? You lost me. You lost me, folks. And I guess I got to get to sleep. It's almost 1:30. It's almost 1:30, but yeah. But hey, thank you, Ricor. And you're very informative. Thank you. Thank you. And I do the best that I can. We have got to build an anti-imperialist movement in America. There is no substitute. There is no get-rich-quick scheme. The internet's not going to do it for us. No one's going to come along and create it for us, right? We have to just do it ourselves. We've got to build a movement. So come to our national training school, right? Please come. Here's the registration link. And we will follow up with people, the new people who've registered. Come to the National Training School in August. It's going to be good. And, reach out to us. Reach out. There's the registration form. Here, I'll put it in the... right. Also, join us in July. It's going to be good, right? July 2nd in New York City, we're having an event. July 18th in Minneapolis, July 11th in Los Angeles. Also, buy my new book. Please buy my new book. This book is a book that should have been published a long time ago. It's got everything that we're about in it. And I'm talking about it on every channel that I possibly can. So go buy my new book, please. And on that note, folks, I am going to say goodnight. It's hard to watch the modern world, understand the modern world without watching at least one Caleb Maupin video. What's your take on the Iran war? It's getting worse. I mean, I have said that what Trump needs to do is just pull out. That's the only way that this war ends. There's not going to be a deal. Israel is never going to sign a deal that allows Iran to support Hezbollah and the Houthis. Iran is never going to sign a deal that says they don't have the right to support them. And as a result of that, there's not going to be a deal. So Trump needs to say, we won, we got them, and get the hell out of there. And if not, if you think things are bad now, wait until the Strait of Bab el Mandab closes. I mean, the world economy is wrecked by this war. Just pull out. Just pull out, right? Trump needs to just leave. All right. But anyway, I got to go now, folks. I'm at the end of my rope, and I got a big day tomorrow. Got a big interview tomorrow with an important podcast. So be in touch, everybody. And all right, here we go.
New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.